This is Jason Anderson, Chairman of the Killenly Town Council, and we're calling this special Town Council meeting to order. It is currently 7 p.m. on Tuesday, February 4th. For roll call purposes, all council members are in attendance. Ms. George is joining us remotely. We'll move on. Next item up on the agenda is interviews for board and commission applicants. 3A, Brian Card is seeking reappointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Welcome, Brian.
Good evening.
I want to apologize for all the confusion. We turned up with all the expiration of the terms and the way everything was on the website showing different stuff, but at least we were able to get that squared away. And I don't know if you had heard when we made the two appointments last month, what we did do is we appointed them to terms that started last year. So these terms would actually start this year because we can't appoint more than 3 members in one calendar year. So, unless it's filling a vacancy. So, that being said, just want to tell us a little bit about why you're seeking reappointment, and anything new you see coming up on the horizon as far as planning and zoning.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. As far as reappointments, so I've been on the commission now for probably more years than I can definitely remember. I think it's about 16, maybe 18 years. I try to gauge it by my son's age. So one of the important things, and I've sat in front of this commission before, we've talked about other vision opportunities and things for the town, but continuity is a big important factor, I think, for this commission. So there's a lot of things that come in front of us that we try to be as consistent with the rules and the regs as possible. So I think if you don't have that continuity between myself, the chairman that's been on the board for multiple years, then other than that, we have some fairly new members. So I think it'd be important for me to seek this reappointment, serve for another, whatever it is, 3-year term, maybe one more after that, and then if the other members continue on this board, maybe it'd be time to retire at that point in time.
Okay. I will open up to council members' questions, comments. Mr. Grandelsky.
Well, I appreciate all the time you put in. I mean, it's a lot of work. People don't understand it, and it's all volunteer. And sometimes you get the ire of some of us that come on, we don't quite agree with what's going on.
Sometimes, Ed?
And it's a learning experience for on both sides, so I appreciate you putting up with everything that you put up with. And I think you have the best interest of the town in mind. And that's the biggest thing that we're looking at, what the best interest of the town, and jump into the conversation, and we just hope for the best.
So thank you. So for those that don't know, I do officiate, and I get yelled at a lot. So I'm used to it. But the key thing is you're fair and consistent. So with the way we apply the rules, and we try to do that, I think, a lot on this commission. So we are consistent. We're looking out for the benefit of the entire town, not just the individual that's usually sitting in front of us.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Doesn't matter. So I'm sure you heard I had a big list of questions. I still have that list of questions for everybody. I cut it down. Some of that was for the public. You already know you wrote these, so you know the basics.
Well, I didn't write your questions.
No, but you wrote a lot of the ordinances. In a rural zone development zone, you are allowed to put one house per every 80,000 square feet, basically one house per a little less than 2 acres. Recently, it was highlighted that our local ordinances for planned residential development are in conflict with this one house per 80,000 square feet rural development wording. The conflicting language in the ordinance says there can be 4 houses per acre in a rural development zone per special permit. The new proposed ordinance language is also in conflict with the Plan of Conservation and Development. The Plan of Conservation and Development does not include the use of planned residential development, larger housing developments, in rural development areas. It mentions specifically only medium and low-density areas shall have these housing developments. The P&Z is in the process of amending our town ordinances. How do you feel about 4 houses per acre in a rural development zone?
No disrespect, but I will not answer that question. So if I answer that question here, then I predispose myself to any other vote that comes in front of me regarding that zoning. So
Satellite community sewers and water systems are currently prohibited from the Planned Residential Housing Development Ordinance. The Plan of Conservation also contains language which discourages the use of satellite sewers as well. The P&Z is in the process of amending our town ordinances. If the town ordinance were to allow for 4 houses per acre in a rural development zone that no longer has to be tied into our public sewer system, our concern is, for example, that there is nothing to stop someone from purchasing 10 acres in the woods and putting up 40 houses, using their own private package sewer plant. The P&Z is in the process of amending our ordinances. How do you feel about the proposal to remove the satellite sewer prohibition in the use of planned residential development, especially in rural development zones?
Once again, it's a question I cannot answer. We have an ordinance pending in front of us right now, or one coming in the future in front of us. If I was to give you an answer today in my opinion, then that would preclude me from voting on anything in front of us.
If appointed, will you agree to always listen to the citizens of Killingly and follow their lead with regards to their wishes for the amount of development and direction of town development when making your planning and zoning decisions?
We constantly take the input of the public into consideration. I think we do a very good job at that, but we try to balance the needs of the community with the few citizens that may be speaking at our public hearings. So I think we do a pretty decent job at keeping the community, what the vision of the town council is, what the vision of the POCD is, and what the vision of the community is. So,
Thank you.
yes.
Have you read the Plan of Conservation and Development? Because I believe last time there was nobody from the Planning and Zoning Commission who had actually read it.
Yes, I've read it. I was part of the drafting of it, I think twice now. If you ask me if I've read it in the last 6-12 months, probably not, but I have it with me at every meeting and constantly refer to it, especially when applications come in front of us.
Okay. So the town council is elected by the residents of the town of Killingly. And we are elected to follow what our constituents want. And so what they want from us is to follow what they want. And so the town council appoints planning and zoning commission members, and the planning and zoning commission should in essence follow what the residents of the town want. So your decisions shouldn't be based on any self-serving or based on self-interests. So how do you feel about developers making suggested changes to planning and zoning regulations at Planning and Zoning Commission adopting these changes? Because there have been a couple of instances where either attorneys or developers came and made changes, and those were adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission, which have basically been for the self-interest of the developer.
Actually, I would disagree with the way you phrased that statement. I mean, we've had experts come in front of us, whether they be developers, whether they be engineers, whether they be surveyors, who have recommended changes to us as a board. We've looked at those changes. We've tried to incorporate maybe some of those changes that would be to the benefit of the community. We've definitely modified a lot of those changes. However, there's a couple dozen planning and zoning regulations that are in front of us. We have a goal to go through each one of them and update them. And so typically when someone comes to us with an idea or a concept that is to the betterment of the community, whether it's adding new development, new industrial development, new commercial development, new residential development that we could grow this community with, we usually start focusing on those. So it may be a developer came and started the process, but I guarantee you the commission has taken that and owned every piece of that and finished it, not to the betterment of the developer, but to the betterment of the community.
So how do you feel about public participation at planning and zoning workshops where the regulations are modified and changed? Because the public was welcomed, and at the past few meetings, they were not allowed to make any comments.
The public is always welcome at our meetings. As far as a workshop, it is exactly that. It's a workshop where we're trying to work through regulations, so there's times when we cannot open the meeting to the public every single time. But if we need to have public input, we typically do open the floor and have the public speak and give us as much input as possible. But there are workshops when we do not open it to the public at that particular time so that we can get some work done. Typically, our workshops are 1 hour in nature, and if we were just have a back and forth on one page, we would just not get through the multiple pages we need to. So I'm sure it's no different than subcommittees that this board has, that you have a workshop, whether it's a budget workshop or an amendment workshop, that you guys will be working through that issue. But it's not open to the public to speak at that meeting.
Thank you.
I've got one I forgot. Is there any mandated law from the state of Connecticut that says we must build up to 4 houses per acre on a rural zone? Or is this the town of Killingly doing it ourselves?
I am not aware of any law.
Any other questions? I do have a couple questions. One of them I thought of as you were speaking. You had mentioned listening to the public and their input, but also you had mentioned weighing that against the needs of the community. How do you determine what are the needs and what are necessary benefits or perceived benefits for the community? when
So
it
the
comes to anything?
POCDs are guiding documents, but it's just that it's a guiding document. It's not, it's not mandated that we follow the POCD, right? The POCD is set out there for a 10-year vision of the community, however things will change over time. So we take that, we use that as a basis for some of our decisions, but we're also looking at whether there's an updated rule, updated law coming in, whether it be, for instance, the affordable housing issue that's out there, if we have to hit that certain threshold, and there's certain, developments or issues that we can address that way. But again, we're trying to think about the community as a whole, especially when zoning changes come in front of us. And we're not looking at that particular parcel, that particular issue that's in front of us, but how would it affect the entire community?
To piggyback on that, do you see any need or benefit to revising the POCD every 5 years instead of 10, especially considering with all the changes that are constantly coming down from the state?
I do think it's a benefit to look at every 5 years. However, if you've been with us when we've tried to revise the document, it typically takes us 2 to 3 years to get it through the process. So by the time we start to finish, the 5 years is almost up. However, it's an evolving, living document. It should not be static.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Well, I'd like to thank you for all your work. You guys, I've watched you. I've watched several meetings. You guys have a lot of work on your plate and a lot of rules and town ordinances and state regulations and federal regulations, all those that you have to navigate, and you guys do a really good job.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for your service. My question is, you said many times that you apply your decisions to the best benefit of the town. If the townspeople can't participate in your workshops, how do you know what's the best thing for the town, what the town wants? Is it, who decides that?
The public does participate in our workshops. What I said was we will open up the workshops to the public comment when needed, and typically we do that a lot. I think what Commissioner Barkley was talking about, there's been a couple workshops that we've kept it closed to public comments so that we can work through some of the pages. Right, it was a 6 or 7 page document that we're working through. So, but we've had workshops open before that, and we'll probably have workshops open after that, so we can receive public comment. And on top of that, whatever that document is that comes out of the workshop has a public hearing. So we will always accept public comment. It's never no public comment from start to finish. So,
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes.
Go
Hello,
ahead.
Mr. Card. I just wanted to reiterate what Tammy said. Thank you so much for your service. I would like to point out, when I first started, I was the planning and zoning liaison. I learned a lot from sitting on that commission. I appreciate the work you guys do, and I listened more than I spoke. So whenever I had a question, you guys were always there to help me. And I have more than enough confidence that the three of you are doing everything you can to follow the guidelines, listen to our community, but also follow the rules, because you are a regulatory body. So thank you for your service to Killingly.
thank you.
Any further questions?
I'll reiterate, Ms. Wakefield and Ms. George, it's certainly Did you say 16 years? Been at
Give or
this for
take, my
16?
son's 20, so I came on a few years after he was born, so.
So,
take.
this one seems like there's really a lot more to P and Z than some of the others. It seems very involved. And I don't know that it's always easy to take everybody's best interest. We're trying to have a balance of where we're going, and everyone has a different vision of that. But I just wanted to applaud that amount of volunteerism. It's well noted, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I do have one more question. If reappointed, would you take into consideration wherever the outcome is of the vision committee that's actually being established, we're interviewing candidates for tonight, and take that into any decisions you're making that may be pertinent to what comes out of the vision committee?
So not knowing what the vision committee outcome is going to be, I mean, what their work product's going to be, but I think it's a great basis for them to be looking at the POCD as part of that, right? I mean, we've had that discussion before, is we're always looking for guidance from this council, is what does Killingly need to look like in the future? What does Killingly need to be when it grows up? We always have that, saying all the time, so I think the vision committee is a big part of that. And if they can give input into the POCD and the next update of the POCD, then absolutely.
The one thing for me with the vision committee is I didn't want it to be the council. I didn't want it to be staff. I wanted this to be something that the public is coming forward to create the vision for the town. And my personal opinion is that will be something that should be taken in a high regard, as well as the POCD when you're, and also in the development for the next revised POCD, to know what direction the community wants to go in.
Mm-hmm. And keeping in mind that, I mean, you all know it, to get participation from the community is hard. So we have a very large community, and we usually get very small participation. And sometimes that participation can be biased one way or another. So you have to take that into account, right? And look at, again, where does this community need to go, and what are the rules we're putting in place for that? That benefits all the community, whether they participated or not.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I want to thank you for coming forward. On behalf of the council and the town, thank you for your time serving the community, and we'll be voting on your reappointment next Tuesday.
All right. Thank you for putting me as A.
Thank you.
You can thank the town manager for that. All right, we'll move on. Next item up on the agenda is item 3B. Keith Thurlow is seeking reappointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I should use 13 or 14. I like 14 better.
Hit the button.
How can I help you?
Just give us a little bit of background as far as why you're seeking reappointment.
Why am I? That's a good question. I kind of ask myself that all the time. Half of it's because my wife keeps telling me, get in there, get in there. But no, I think as Brian has spoken, we've worked together for so long, trying to move things forward, trying to keep things up to date, fresh. It's not easy to do when you got laws, working with the laws that hold, go one way, and you got to try and work within them. It's a difficult job. It's a difficult job. The states come in now, and you got a mandatory, I think it's 5 hours a year now, right? So now we've got an extra 5 hours we got to go get educated every year. And I've been on so long, I've been to classes after classes after classes, and it still changes. I mean, we had a class the other day there when all the new people came on, because with the new fresh people, before we wanted them to act on anything, we wanted to make sure they had a good understanding of what their job is. And so I had them bring up the attorney in right away so that we could have they have a good basis of what they're supposed to be doing in the guidelines, basics. And I'm sure they didn't learn all that much in an hour, but I think, they hand out, they can refer to it and, whatever. I don't know. Community service, let's face it, right? And once you're on this kind of thing, it's kind of addiction, quite frankly. You gotta, you know, what do we do right or wrong? Because no matter what, you're always upsetting somebody. If the guy's on one side or the other side, you know, you gotta try, and it's not about pleasing any one of them. It's about following the regulations, following the state law. So that's what we try to do.
I will open up. Mr. Grandelsky.
I appreciate all the time you have been putting in. I think that's more time at the table, and then off the table, there's a lot of stuff going on too. It's not just.
Phone calls.
Yeah, it's not just sitting there when everybody's watching it on TV
No.
and criticizing you then, yeah, there's the other interaction that's going on. And it's a lot of work, and it's all, again, it's all volunteer. This is a volunteer.
Right.
You got a lot of burden, you're a regulatory authority, so it puts a lot of heat as to what is going on. So some of the other boards and commissions not, I mean, we're all necessary. They all help the town out, but this one, there's a lot going on. And,
You know, we talk about regulatory, I try my best to keep an attorney on hand, especially if there's something of concern that we need to have an attorney there. We used to have an attorney at our meetings all the time, and we haven't, there was a whole stretch there where we didn't have any attorneys available to us, and it was quite bothersome, quite frankly. And you get people's opinions, but it's not the law. So, you know, and an attorney is the one that's going to defend you in court. So you want that person involved, especially in controversial matters. So of late, we've had a good relationship starting up with that Ken Slater, and he's been there when we need him. So, you know, that's a good thing.
Well, I agree, in a lot of cases, I think you need that help.
Definitely.
Maybe not all the time, but then again, there was a few meetings that I was at, and it was like, I think you would have liked to have had the attorney there.
Oh,
Because
definitely.
it would have made a difference. And
Yeah.
So, yes, it's a costly to have them here, but it helps out the decision-making process.
It's unnecessary evil, you know, like insurance, right?
Like you said, he's gonna defend you, or she, whatever, they're gonna defend you, so I can, you know, maybe they might get it, they may not be 100% right, so I'm not always the favorite.
Well, every time we adjust the regulations, that gets sent out and reviewed by the town attorney. And, you know, he comes back with his recommendations. And most of the time, we follow his his or her recommendations as to, you know, how we should move forward with it. I mean, like I said, the bottom line is, he's gonna defend us, so we wanna make sure that, you know, he's the one that's giving us the what's right, and what's wrong, so we try to follow his guidance, or, you know, his or hers, excuse me.
Well, like he said a few times, this is the state regulatory issues of the legislative body of the state make a lot of changes, so he's trying to keep you guys honest and within what those guidelines are, so, yeah, I think it's a good idea to have them. You need the backup.
Definitely.
Appreciate your time. It's,
Any further questions?
I've just got the same ones, Keith.
Yeah.
I'll try not to read the whole thing.
I'll put it to it in a nutshell for you, okay?
Yeah.
Number one, it's not 4 houses per acre, it's 4 units per acre.
Okay?
It's a difference. That's where
Okay.
you're tying a building into 1 unit. So 4 houses per acre, no, that's never gonna happen.
Okay.
It's not the regulation. And I explained to you guys, you know, you guys have really been active in participating. And quite frankly, you know, the reason, you know, you guys have spoke about us speaking, holding the meetings privately, and we don't. I've always advocated for public participation, always. And anytime there's a regulation change, there's always a public hearing at the end. So ultimately, in the end, there's always, it's a law, you have to have a public hearing. And public hearing is where the real impact comes in. We do our best, we try to work with people at the workshop level. However, in this case, the PRD, as you know, 'cause you guys were there, we were getting nothing done. We were at 4 meetings, and we didn't get past page 1. I mean, and that's a lot to ask of volunteers. So we had to do something, so we were moving forward. Knowing that in the end, it's still going to be a public hearing. That's why we ultimately cut off the last two meetings from public comment. Having said that, regulations, typically, people don't even have public comment during regulations, workshops, period. And I've always tried to be open and forthright, and because to me, it's like, okay, if we get into participation now, if you're taking the time to participate, then it means something to you. Because quite frankly, we don't get a lot of participation. So if it means something to you, then we can respect a little bit better of what, okay? But, we weren't really getting stuff to move forward. We weren't getting direction. We were just getting that you weren't doing anything what we want. So it's quite difficult for us to sit there and digest that and say, okay, well, how do we move forward with this? Because even if people in rural development have a right, as much as people in LD, every one of these people have a right to do something with their land. We try to guide it with the regulations, So, no, I actually got offended by the thought that you guys telling us that, at the last meeting, I'm listening to people saying we didn't open the floor up. I've been on the 21 years, and 5.5 as a town employee in engineering doing this. So I've got a lot of experience in this, and to me, that's it's like somebody once told me very early on. He says, at the municipal level, people don't get an opportunity to participate in government. They don't get an opportunity to voice their opinion in government. They go out at the state level and the federal level, and it's out of reach, basically, except for your representative. So you tend to let people say their opinions. I tend to let people say their opinions at the risk of upsetting people, members of the commission or members of the staff or just public in general, because it's an opportunity for them. They pay taxes. They want to be able to voice their opinion. So I totally, disagree and will argue that fact, that it's a closed meeting.
Okay, that's Ula's question, that's not my question. Just so you know, there was one time we had a beef, and you came out, and I was talking to this woman, and you said, "Are you telling her I lead a terrible meeting?" And what I was actually saying is you lead one of the best meetings I've ever seen, just so you know that.
Well, thank you.
And
I
think
appreciate that.
we were too beefy for you to hear that, because I tried to say that, but that is what I was telling her.
Okay.
But let me just clarify. So you're saying it's 4 units, because I'm looking at developments all across the country where it is 4 houses and they're using the package plants. So are you saying it couldn't ever be 4 houses?
Well, you'd have to it would have to be a regulation change. It's 4 units, like townhouses. It's
Okay, so
Yeah.
how is your feeling about 4 units on an acre, which would be 8 units on 2 acres?
well, I mean, you know how I voted. We voted
Okay,
on this
nope,
the other
that's-
day. So
I'm just
and I
going
really
through the
don't want
questions.
to.
Okay, sure. So, do you have any feelings that you'd like to share about removing the satellite sewer prohibition? And I'll just reiterate my fear that we have. If we were to allow 4 houses per acre, or 4 units per acre, or 8 units per 2 acres in a rural development, it's no longer tied into our public sewer system. Our concern is, for example, that there is nothing to stop someone from purchasing 10 acres and putting 40 houses with a package plant. And I have a picture right here of some place that is happening. And if you can't say, that's okay, but I'm curious what you...
Well, I think a good example of that is more to do with like affordable housing. If you don't take care of affordable housing, which if you don't meet that mandate, which we've had in town before, we got sued, and the developer came in, and he just put his houses out any way he wanted. If you go up beyond the Golden Greek, the split of 21 and 12, all those houses were put in because we had not met affordable housing at the time. And so if you look at all those houses, they don't meet any zoning. If they do, it's by chance. Because if you go up that area, they're right on top of each other. Their setbacks are minimal. They're like LD maybe. I don't even know if they're LDs.
So I get what you're saying, and I know you guys have good intent to avoid that 830G or whatever, but my question would be, how do you feel about removing the satellite sewers in rural development? The same? It's okay, I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
As opposed to
the
low
regulations,
development
the
or
regulations,
medium?
as they say, I'm not going to go into speculation. The regulations, as they say right now, if, I mean, there are proposed regs, and you can't even remember what they are, but the regulations, as they state right now, is you have to have sewer for
Correct,
PRD.
correct.
So,
So the suggestion that we,
in rural development, how many places do we have sewer? That pretty much
no,
controls.
no, that's why I'm asking you, because
You know,
the suggestion was
yeah,
to
but that's-
remove that from rural.
I guess you have to wait and see how I act on it when it comes
That's
to the
okay, thank
commission.
you. Thank you.
Quite
Thank you. I'm
frankly.
not trying to, just trying to find what you think. I already feel that you do listen to the citizens, so I'm not going to ask that question. Is there any mandated law from the state of Connecticut that says we must build up to 4 houses per acre, 4 units per acre on a rural zone?
Not to my knowledge. I
Thank
want
you.
to know.
Thank you, Keith. And thank you for your service, too. Sorry, it's been such a painful process. So people know I take my job just as serious, and I have to relay the concerns. I know other people might have different concerns, and I respect that, but I'm going to continue to relay them, and it's not personal, and I
Well-
have nothing bad to say about any of you, honestly.
But honestly, if you come in with something, constructive where, okay, maybe if you don't we do this, well, why don't we do this? And that way there, it puts our minds into all right, well, let's think about this. Could we, is it practical? Does it make sense? How's it affect the neighborhood? All that kind of stuff. I love that for public participation. And I mean, after being involved in it for so many years, people just, it's usually only the people that are being affected that show up on things.
I agree, but that's why we were trying to kind of head it off.
No.
So that we
And
wouldn't
you
get
were
into a
I know what you were
situation
doing, and that's
where
fine.
People would yell and scream later. I
But-
want to get it.
But try to come up and be constructive and say, okay, this is what we should do, or we shouldn't do it, maybe we try this, and that, because, I mean, let's face it, we sit there and get a packet in on a Friday afternoon, and then how many times do we get another addendum on the Monday night meeting, and we're supposed to sit there and digest this, educate ourselves, and then act on it, and it's like,
I hear that. We're in the same position here.
Big
Big money. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Here it comes across the table.
okay.
So to reiterate Michelle's, so we were bringing forth, or I was bringing forth the comments from the residents of the 3rd District.
Right.
Who said that I am their town councilor and I represent them at the meeting. That's what they think. So I'm bringing forth what they're telling me. And as far as following the regulation goes, the planning and zoning is writing the regulations, so you are following your own regulations.
Well, most of the time, we're adjusting what we've already had. So, like the PRD, what we've been working on since May or June, I think it was, that particular one was updated. Like I told you, I spent one meeting just trying to explain the process of how we got to where we are.
2017, 2018,
It was with the
with the,
elderly housing in Attawaugan, up there off of 12.
Westview, yes.
Westview.
The owner of Westview.
Well, yeah, but it was for that project. So you're trying to, I mean, that's a needed project, and maybe that particular way we approached that, maybe it wasn't the right way to do it, but that's what we came up with at the time. So, and that's where the PRD got adjusted to help accommodate that. Maybe we should have done, hindsight has gone into, said, okay, well, maybe this should be a commercial. Maybe we should just rezone,
Those few acres.
yeah, I mean, you have to do 10 acres. You try to do 10 acres because otherwise it's considered spot zoning. But yes, but that's a hindsight thing. So it's like, maybe we could do something like that in the future because let's face it, every regulation is fluid. I mean, you find out it doesn't work for you, then you go back in and change it, so.
So that was the concern with the satellite sewers.
On-site septic systems, is that what you
Yeah.
mean by satellite?
Yes, it said.
We only spoke about that.
But I'm just gonna reiterate to the people who didn't hear that, it was said that would never happen. If it would never happen, then it should be never allowed in the regulations, because you're the ones who are writing the regulations and approving the regulations. And you had also said, people come in, are in an uprising when something is going up in their backyard.
And that's always the way.
Right, because they expect us to represent them when these regulations are being written.
Well, like I said earlier, the regulation as written right now says it has to be on city sewer, city water.
Correct. but-
So right now, the regs are, these other on-site septic systems, to be, I'm not that familiar, I do septic systems, I'm a licensed installer, so, but I can't tell you with the experience of a on-site system for, multiple units.
But see, that would open up rural to,
Well, that's part of the discussion, isn't it?
right, correct, so, but
So-
what the concern is, that would open rural up to high density, and,
If it could happen.
It could happen if it's in there.
But I see.
So essentially, and you talked about spot zoning, so if you have planned residential developments, cluster developments, in my opinion, that's nothing more than a nice way for spot zoning.
Well, I'll let you, I'm not gonna change your opinion. You can have your
Right.
opinion. That's your life. It's, I'm on my side of the fence. Spot zone is very well defined. And,
But I'm
That's not-
representing the people from the third district.
I feel I'm representing people of the whole town. I mean, quite frankly, and they don't maybe see it that way. But when I get them all upset with me and I see them in my face, I know I am. You can't make everybody happy. You try to do your best you can and with whatever knowledge you can, and you try to utilize the town engineer, as well as the town attorney. As far as on-site septic systems, I couldn't tell you because I really don't know. The technology is changing so much. I don't know how much area it would take to put an on-site system to handle 4 units, so, I know I said that at a meeting, to my knowledge, I don't see how you could fit it all, how it would be practical, and, so why have it? But I really don't know. That's something we're still working on PRD, so, it could come up again. I don't know. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that's just a big question of itself, to me.
All right, thank you.
Ma'am?
P and Z, does that, it's NDDH that approves septic systems.
Well, they approve, yes, correct.
So if they don't get approval from MDDH, they can't put in a septic system in anyways.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
really, that's nothing that you really have any.
Well, you don't have any real say over. And it's, septic systems take a certain amount of area. You gotta have separation distances.
And if you need well water, you can't have the septic too close to the well.
Right. Some towns require that a septic system and the well on the same property have to be 75 feet away, and that means the neighboring lot, the minimum 1.84 acres, that one has to be 75 feet, meet the same separations. So it ends up meeting that house has to have 2.5 acres. I think it was Brooklyn that was doing that for a while. I don't know if they still are. And I could be wrong there, but that means it needs more acreage than the 1.84 acres if you write the regs that way.
And after I've spent over 10 years on the board of directors at NDDH. And
Well, that was fun, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, that was lots of fun. I learned a lot there, too. Just like Patty learned when she was your liaison for P and Z. But it also depends on your soil. If your soils aren't right,
That's the whole thing.
you can't put septic in. So ultimately, They can propose it, but if they can't make it happen,
Right.
it becomes a moot point. But I also, just like with Brian, I'd like to thank you. I mean, being the chair particularly for a regulatory board is a great responsibility, and you do it well, and you do
Well,
your
thank you.
job well.
Thank you.
And no, I know darn well your wife might have some poking there, but I think you're.
That's her job.
I think you poke each other, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's for sure. Anybody else?
Yep, I just have a couple questions. As I had talked to Mr. Card and asked him, how do you determine what the needs and benefit of the community are?
People speaking at a meeting. I mean, quite frankly, that's what you don't talk about it out in the public, because who knows what somebody's really saying to you. I mean, you might say something, but you're not supposed to speak about any applications. If it's speaking about just regulations, you can speak about it. But if it's an application from somebody coming in, then that's off limits. So it's basically public input at a meeting.
How do you feel about or do you see a need to revise a POCD every 5 years instead of 10?
The POCD?
Yeah.
It's such a difficult job. I mean, it's 2 and 3 years to do one every 10 years. And we've done it the 2 times I've been involved in it. We've done it where you bring in everybody you can, everybody that's a part of the town, the school board, the Board of Ed. Now we have the police, but we've always had, some there, the engineering staff, town staff, fire departments, anybody and everybody that is a part of the town. We try to bring them in that represents a certain sector, agricultural commission, recreation commission. You try to, utilize everybody's input and come up with that document. It's a difficult document to write, quite frankly. It's a difficult document to get people to. You got to get people to show up and participate in. That's it's difficult. I mean, quite frankly, you have public meetings. Last time I think we had them at the high school, if I remember right. You bring food in, you bribe, whatever it takes, and you try to get them to participate, and you do what you can, but it works. You want to, and that's your guide. And quite frankly, like Brian said, the plan of conservation and development is a guide. You try to go heavily on it, but it's still a guide. It can't foresee every little thing that we run into. You can just imagine. I mean, try doing that in your own household. Try to foresee everything to run into. It's just.
Other question I have, with the vision committee that's the ordinance has been established and we're starting to do interviews for. Whatever comes out of that vision committee, if reappointed, is that something that you would look at when you're developing the next POCD and when you're making any decisions?
If they show up at a meeting and they speak as the committee, even if they come in individually, again, participation at a meeting. The people that come to a meeting have an vested interest, and they want to participate. If they're willing to come in and take their time and speak, it's difficult for a lot of people to get up there and speak. We know that. And they want to participate, I'm going to sit down and listen to them. So how much it sways, it depends on all the participation,
So my last question I have is, as chair, or does the Planning and Zoning Commission as a whole follow up on making sure conditions that have been put on permits or special permits are followed up?
I try. I go, lately I've been going in to see Anne Marie and the staff usually once a week. On Monday morning I'll go in and we talk about what's going on, what's coming up, and issues, yeah, I always try. It's, it's not a fail-safe, but it's all on your own time,
So if you did come across, let's say there was a permit that had certain conditions, those conditions weren't met, what steps would you or could you take?
Mouth off to staff, quite frankly. I mean, staff going from the town manager, you work your way up. I mean, I've never been afraid to speak my voice. I don't think anybody can argue that. I mean, for better or worse.
All right, that's all I had. Any other questions from council members?
I have a couple of questions and comments.
Go ahead.
So first of all, I want to thank you for your service. I think you do a great job, and you do not have an easy job. There is a lot of misinformation, I would say, and maybe confusion about this PRD situation you guys are dealing with currently. So I took it upon myself. I went and met with the planning department, and I found out some things I didn't know. So can you explain the difference to the public between traditional, residential, and the PRD? Because that's two different regulation codes, correct?
You're
When
confusing
you're
me.
making decisions?
Traditional,
On single family, so I'm talking single families versus like subdivision or like townhouses. There's a little
Okay.
difference in there when you're setting how many can be on an acre, so on and so forth.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, Patty, quite frankly. I've never heard the term traditional versus, I couldn't understand the rest of it. I apologize.
Okay, so I will follow up with Anne Marie, because maybe I'm not explaining myself well. As far as the legislation currently, right now, we're looking at work, live, ride, and then fair share. They've come up again in the legislation. Is there anything the town council can do to support or not support that legislation, and how would it affect Killingly if those two pieces of legislation passed?
What did,
And that's related to the transit-oriented district.
TOD, so work, live, ride is, sorry, there's proposed legislation again with regards to work, live, ride, so the transit-oriented development, meaning higher development density around transit.
so higher densities are on train
Right,
stations,
which I know
bus
that we,
routes.
we did submit comments in opposition of that legislation. One of our planning staff did that on behalf of the town.
And what was the other one?
You had work, live, ride, and what was the other one, Patty?
The fair share.
Oh, fair share, yeah, so, yeah, fair share is the
I bring it
affordable
up
housing.
because
Fair
they're
share.
both related to that minimum affordable housing.
It's affordable housing.
Requirement. And one of the things they're pushing is to penalize towns if we are not at that 10%.
Correct.
So what can we do as a body? Is there a certain, stance we could take to support planning and zoning to stop our, Laura and Michelle are so concerned with high density. If this legislation passes, we're not gonna have a choice in rural areas. And I think they understand that.
So
You could opt out.
provided legislation allows for opting out. So that would be.
Right now it does.
Correct. Right now,
Okay.
we were allowed to opt out. So it's a matter of, I think part of the question is, how can the town council support planning and zoning in pushing back against mandated requirements for development and housing?
So this is speculative, isn't it? It's-
Correct. This is pending legislation. This is legislation that's been introduced a couple of times through the different years.
Right.
This is
I've
again
heard it
pending
before.
legislation, yes.
Patty, not to be offensive, but I try to stay on what we have for regulations and not into, just a minute, please. Not what's coming. I mean, the closest I can say that we've experienced to something like this is, I mean, we've spoke about it in the past at different times. But we had a guy came, that presentation that we had at one time, wasn't that part of that?
Yeah, that was the desegregate CT. He'd requested to come and do a presentation to the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know about it, what it was, it just showed up.
Yeah.
But the closest I can say to stuff like that is like some of these developments, when we've been doing them, we try to put in a bus station. That's the closest I can think of. You know, some sort of station so that public transit can come in, or public, school, I don't know about school buses but it's more about public transit so that people can have alternate ways to commute around town and to get out and about without having to have a car. But, I mean, quite frankly, everybody around here, everybody's hooked on a car, so it's not very practical, but we try.
Well, I would like to thank you for answering that, because I understand that legislation inside and out. Because when Desegregate Connecticut came in, I had already been researching them. So your stance is that's really not something Killingly has to worry about. So all the fear mongering about our density being lifted, and we're gonna look like Romantic or Hartford, that's a pipe dream.
Well, I mean, that's, the densities are all based on the zones, where the zones are in town and how, how they're laid out. I mean, I've said it before that we've tried to keep the higher densities closer, in general, along the Route 12, 395 corridor. Try to generate, keep the densities closer to the highway, until that changes. I mean, and it's not uniform across the whole town, north to south either. I mean, you go east-west, and there's still rural development for the most part.
Right. So that's my point with that question. I brought that up specifically because there's a group that's pushing, with these two legislative potential laws going into effect, it would change the landscape of all of our small towns. And that I don't see that happening. And I'm happy you answered the way you did. Thank you.
Okay. Jason?
I have a comment on that. So, Keith, you did make a comment when we fell below the 10% of the 830G, that the developer came in and he built those houses and he didn't have to follow any of the planning and zoning regulations, correct? And that's,
Correct. To my knowledge, he didn't have to, no.
so when we do fall.
He had to go to court. He went to court to do
Right.
it.
So when you fall below the 10%, a developer can come in and put whatever development they want without following the planning and zoning regulations.
Right, I'm not privy to, does he have to go to court to do that, or, I just know he did. He ended up suing to go to court and did that, but that was many
I
years
believe
ago.
they can file the application on an 830G basis, and the planning and zoning can't deny. So if you do deny, they can go to court on that basis, but I don't believe they have to go to court in order to be able to develop on an 830G basis.
Yeah, and that affordable housing, everything, it's changes so much, the conditions, because of, mortgages affect it, not just housing size, the cost, but there's all kind of gambit of different things that affect.
But one of the suggestions that I had made for the rent control units was to add, I think the proposed is 20% rent control units in any PRD. And that would help offset the required 10% affordable housing units for each municipality. Because there was nothing in there, so if there's no requirements, then you're never going to reach that 10% threshold, because I believe we're below it right now, or close to it.
Are we below it?
I believe last year we dipped just below it for the first time.
Like 9.9 or 9.8 or something like
Yeah,
that?
just recently. We've been above the 10%.
Right, I know
for quite
we've
some
been
time.
above it.
But a lot of the refinancing and the current,
Right.
the current mortgages, because of the current market, haven't been financed in the pathway that counts towards affordability. So they're more conventional mortgages, which don't count towards that.
Any more questions, comments? You have anything further for us?
Coffee and donuts?
Those more, we'll have to go.
A little later.
All right, want to thank you for coming forward, seeking reappointment. Thank you for your time on a P and Z, and we'll be voting on your reappointment next Tuesday.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. We'll now move on the agenda. Next item up is 3C. John Serentopoulos is seeking reappointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Good evening.
John, hit the button.
Yeah, just make sure your microphone's on. Okay.
Nope.
All right. Can you just tell us why you're seeking reappointment? Other than the confusion of the...
I've been in this
when the term-
community a long time, and I've been involved for many years, and I still think I'm capable of continuing for a few more years.
Okay. All right. I will open up to council members for comments.
Hi, John. I've just
Hi.
got the same questions. I think you're very capable and you do a great job, just for the record.
Thanks.
So I'm just back to the 2 houses or 2 units. 4 houses per acre, 4 units per acre. It is happening in other towns. If anybody wants to contact me after, I can put them in touch with people who've done housing developments on the satellite sewers. I have an example of one here, but I have closer examples in Massachusetts. How do you feel about 4 units per acre or 4 houses per acre, whichever is possible, with a special permit?
I've always been a big believer in a system like the public surge system that we have. I know a lot of people, it's a money factor. They don't want to extend it. Others don't want to extend it because they don't want the congestion, because every time you extend those lines, you make building that much more possible. But as it currently stands, and it has been said at our meetings, and I'm sure you two have heard it because you're at most of those meetings. In all probability, they won't pass the health department's standards for putting in a system, and it won't be possible anyway. You know, we've got a very ledgy, rocky terrain. We've got a lot of wetlands, and they have to meet those standards in order to do it. Now, in areas where those lines have been extended, yeah, if they meet the regulations, they can build those units.
And just for clarification, when the lines are expanded, then in general, it's not a rural anymore, right?
Say that again?
As your sewer lines expand,
Well, they haven't been expanded.
correct, but as they do, that's kind of what changes your zones anyways, right?
Well, if public utilities are available,
Yeah, you're
that's
no-
going to
you're no longer in
encourage,
your rural
that's going to
zone.
encourage whether it's industrial or
Right.
residential
Yeah, so that's,
construction.
we're
Yeah,
kind of saying the
yeah.
same thing. And again, I'll reiterate, if you want to know some towns, areas that are doing it with, 4 houses per acre. Again, it's not that they're doing it 4 houses per acre, they're doing it 40 houses on 10 acres with package plants. If anybody's interested in the information, you can reach out to me after. It is happening. So on that, I think.
I would venture to say that their soil conditions are much,
It's possible,
better
but this is on
than in
Cape
this
Cod.
area.
One of the places that it's really happening is Cape Cod because of the saltwater line intrusion. So they don't have very much room. It's worth researching, I would say.
fortunately, we
anyways.
don't have that issue here.
Correct.
So,
No, but
intrusion.
it's a similar
Yeah,
issue of, intrusion and limited space. And so that's how they're dealing with that there. So that's the satellite sewers. The 4 houses per acre just sounds like you don't think it's possible. But like I said, how do you feel about citizens? We always listen to the citizens making your decisions.
Well, I'm going to agree with Mr. Thurlow. I think, the meetings that I've attended, in addition to my time on planning and zoning, that's always been a priority, where they've allowed people to come in and make public comment, more so than what's required by law. I think the public does have a voice, but I mean, you look at, and I think they refer to it as a mission statement, whether it's a plan of conservation or plan and zoning or whatever, everybody has a statement where, it states the objective of whatever, they're assembled for. And I think that the public's opinion is weighed with the proper weight, along with all the other issues that have to be considered
Thank
on
you.
planning and zoning.
Thank you for that, John. The last question I'll have is, do you know of any regulation that is mandating 4 units, 4 houses per acre in a rural development that's coming from the state? Or is
No, no, I
that
do
something
not.
we're doing? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could just clarify that a little bit.
Go ahead.
That's why we have the attorney is there. A lot of these issues come up, and you have to have somebody that's skilled in that area of the law to guide you into.
I would agree. I read those things like 20
Mrs.
times.
Slater does
I read the
a
same
great job.
sentence over and over again. When I read them, it takes me 20 times to reach each sentence.
You already answered my question about the importance of public participation, but how do you feel about when developers and attorneys come and suggest changes to the regulations for planning and zoning?
Well, that probably happens with every applicant. They come in and they test what they're proposing to you. And that's the job of planning and zoning. And I can think of one individual in particular, because he's very skilled at this, who scrutinizes those applications, and along with the town engineer, along with the sewer commission, the Department of Health, it all gets scrutinized to make sure that they're within what they're able to do according to the planning and zoning regulations. So there's a lot of residents that come in and would like you to enact certain things because of their needs. It's the same thing with developers. They do the same thing. So I guess that's one of the main reasons why it's important to have a planning and zoning board in your community, to make sure that the playing field is level, and everybody everybody wants the right to do what they can with their property. There are limits for everybody, and it all has to be sorted out, and with those regulations and boards and commissions, it gets done.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple questions, same questions I asked Mr. Card and Mr. Thurlow. How do you determine what the needs and what benefits the community?
Well, you look at the plan of conservation, all parties of the community. I remember looking at the list of participants that are stated, and it's, I'm certain that all areas of the community were represented, and they came up with that plan, and it's a guide.
Do you see any need or benefit to revising POCD every 5 years instead of 10?
Probably not. I mean, it was stated by others that it takes 5 years to accomplish it once you start that review. So it seems to me that you wouldn't accomplish a whole lot more if it was a shorter time frame.
Okay. I know there was one other question I had. Just one thing I've heard talked about, and I've heard it said when I was at other meetings, and I've heard council members even say it, that what are you worried about? Things aren't going to happen. My big concern is when you open a door for something to happen, even though you think it won't, you never know what could come down the pipeline. And the fact that you talked about soil being a limiting factor, I wouldn't always depend on NDDH. I look at my house that was built in the mid-90s. The septic system was approved by the Board of Health, and it failed in a year. And they had to come back in, rip the property up, expand the septic system. And I know there's a lot of clay in this area. There's a lot of ledge, bedrock, whatever you want to call it. So, I mean, I don't see the benefit to always changing things, even though you think financially it may not happen. So, in a sense, what I'm referring to is the satellite sewers. And one of the council members previously had said, oh, what are you worried about it? Nobody's going to be able to afford to do that. And then shortly afterwards, there was a proposed development in Brooklyn, Connecticut, where they were going to have to do the same thing because they couldn't tie in a sewer. So I always encourage people who, when you're making decisions, think about all the possibilities on not just what's possible now, but what allowing something, allowing a change in an ordinance or regulation, how that could impact the community down the road, and not just what is and isn't possible right now.
That's a favorite topic of mine. I'm talking in general terms now. We, and I include myself, and I'm sure all communities fall into this category, have a tendency to vote our pocketbooks. And in many cases, it's detrimental. I had a off-the-cuff conversation with the town manager earlier this evening. We were talking about the high school, was it? No.
The elevator for the.
The elevator in this building, yes. I pushed the button, nothing happened. I stood there for about 5 minutes, finally it came down. And that was the reason why you held last month's meeting because it was inoperable. I was around and active sort of in politics when the discussion came up on whether or not to build a new town hall. They wanted to build it where the courthouse is today. I went to school in that grammar school that was on that property through the seventh grade when Zip Zera's daughter fell through the second floor, and that got everything going on building Killenly Memorial School. But the townspeople looked at, I'm sure, the dollar amounts, new versus renovations. But if you take a look from that period on to now, the amount of money that's gone into this building versus what it would have cost to have built a new one on that site, and you probably would have had a couple of elevators, not just one. I think a lot of times, we're penny conscious and dollar foolish. So the same thing applies with what you're talking about. I mean, you never know, especially in this day and age, if things are going to change. There's always the unexpected. But the best you can do is make a judgment on what is now and what you feel is going to be the future, I guess. That'd be my thought.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from council members? Mr. Grandowski.
Being a volunteer,
Thanks.
I appreciate everybody coming forward, all the boards and commissions, and it's a lot of work, all of it. And again, being a regulatory agency here, this is even tougher than most, so I appreciate the time that is put in, and it's a lot. And it's a lot of education that has to go with it, a lot of training, and you guys are putting up with it, putting up with the public, and thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'd just like to thank you as well. Served on this council with you for a number of years, and I can guarantee the public and the rest of the members of this council that you are not afraid to voice your opinions when they need to be voiced. So I applaud you, and you do it well, and you always do your homework, and you have your facts to back up your opinions, and I just want to thank you for everything that you've done through the years, and
Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you. All right. Just want to thank
Hi,
you.
Dora.
Oh,
Did you
okay.
forget me?
No, I had asked and you didn't chime in, so I didn't think you had anything.
I didn't hit the button.
No.
Just wanted to thank you for your service, and I also appreciate your frankness, and you're willing to do research on the topics, and you always bring a fresh voice to the commission. And yeah, so this, I will say, for the planning and zoning commissioners tonight, this is a formality for me, and you all have my support next week.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
Okay,
Just want to thank you for coming forward and seeking reappointment, and thank you for your service, and we'll be voting on your reappointment next Tuesday.
thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll now move on in the agenda. Next item up is 3D. Robert Lofquist is seeking reappointment to the Conservation Commission.
Good evening, everyone.
Welcome. Can you just tell us a little bit about your time on the Conservation Commission and why you're seeking reappointment?
Sure. It's something that's personally very important to me. I think it's nice to be able to talk about the flip side of what we've been talking about for the last hour. So, all the non-development stuff. But I think that's important. It's important to me. I think it's important to everybody. It's important to our health. And I think we all live here and don't live in Hartford and Providence for reasons. And I think it's important to protect the green spaces around us that help us out. So, I've really enjoyed, I've been, following all these long-termers. I'm kind of a newbie, but I've really enjoyed learning a lot about the statutory stuff, the town stuff and the requirements, learning about how the meetings go and then the priorities of the Conservation Commission, and I'd like to continue that. So I think it's been really good. So.
Okay. All right. I will open up to council members for questions. Mr. Grandelsky.
Well, I like it. You're at the conservation meetings, you're engaged, you're right there, you're not just sitting back. Everybody on the conservation is pretty much, it's a very positive thing, and I'm glad you're here. I appreciate your volunteerism, and we appreciate your participation. It's laudable, I think I'm glad you're on board.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I would like to say the same to all of you, too. I mean, I've been to enough town council meetings now, and I'm just totally impressed with all the work that you all put in, and you too. So, but.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I have a comment, and it's to all the members of the Conservation Commission, that you should try to familiarize yourself with the Work, Live, Ride, because in addition to legislation that's proposed, it also has legislation in there overriding inland wetlands watercourses and conservation of
Okay.
local towns, taking over local P&Zs to be, yes, so.
Thank you, I will.
You're welcome.
We will. We'll bring that up at the next meeting. I think it sounds like that's something that we should know about, so.
Yeah, you can probably look up a lot of the information on the state site of what they're proposing.
Okay. And if not, I can reach out to you, so.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I want to thank you for seeking reappointment, and thank you for the time you've devoted. Ms. George, did you have
I
anything?
think she said thank you.
I did. Hello, Mr. Lofquist. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Thank you for stepping up and serving your community. I thank everyone. It is more work than some people realize. I had a question. There's another, to follow up on what Ula said, if you go to CT 169 Strong on Facebook, they have a lot of information about the upcoming legislation for the planning and zoning. And they break it down in really good layman's terms. So if you want
Thank
to go
you.
take a look at that, that would be very helpful. What do you think of our forestry management plan here in Killingly? And do you see any areas where we could improve?
I'm not that familiar with it, but I know we are currently working on a project up at Chase Reservoir, which is mostly to do with the ash trees up there right now. And I think it was a good plan. The ash trees up there, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, there's a organism called the emerald ash borer. It's killing all the ash trees. Killingly kind of decided, I think with the blessing of the commission, that We would harvest those trees because they're going to die anyway, and they could benefit the town. We can actually get some money out of that, and do it in a planful way versus, letting the ash borers just kill it and have to deal with the trees that are falling down. We have also had some tree work done up at Chase to make it safer for people to be there. I think the forest management plans have to take that into consideration if the public is going to be on the properties that the town owns or has easements on. It has to be safe for people. So I think right now, from what I've been able to see, things are in pretty good shape.
Thank you.
Sure.
So we're doing our job.
I hope so, yes.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Any other questions, comments? Do you have anything further for us?
No, other than to say, I know one of the other candidates, Bob Mullen, who would be following, he had to leave for personal reasons. So just to let you know, he was here, but he did have to leave, so I'm not sure what to do. He probably rescheduled that, so.
Okay.
And did Gene show up? Well, I'm not sure. Gene Montfort may not be here either, so.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for coming forward to seek reappointment, and thank you for your time serving the community. And we'll be voting on your reappointment next Tuesday. So moving on in the agenda, next up is Jean Mountford, and she is not here this evening. And Mr. Mullen had to leave, so we'll move on to item 3G. Joe Markley is seeking appointment to the Vision Committee. And you are seeking appointment as a regular or alternate member. The term would run from date of appointment until December 30th of 2026. And the Vision Committee will be comprised of 9 regular members and 3 alternate members. All right, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're seeking appointment to the Vision Committee?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to listen to my dog and pony show today. Joe Markley, I've been almost a lifelong resident of Killingly. Born here in Putnam, went to St. James, went to Killingly High School, graduated in '96. UConn, accounting major, and started off as an FP&A practitioner up in Boston, so I moved to Boston for a while. Came back to Connecticut to get my MBA in finance and management consulting, so was living here in Killingly for that. Did about 10 years of consulting work for a lot of large organizations doing planning, budgeting, forecasting, reporting, analytics type projects. And then over the last 10 years, I've been working as a sales consultant, primarily for Workday, which is the logo I have on my shirt. But a lot of large organizations kind of across industries, multinational organizations working on strategic planning, working on annual budgets, working on monthly rolling forecasts, working on reporting and analytics. So I've effectively been planning my whole professional career. And I happened to see the ad in the Turnpike Buyer. I still read that on Wednesdays. And thought it might be a good fit for me and a good way for me to give back to the community.
All right, thank you. I will open up for questions, comments from council members. Mr. Grandelsky.
I appreciate you coming forward. It's great that you want to be active in this, and I like it. I like the Vision Committee because the council members are not there. It's just the general public, which is good. We are not being influenced you. We may be sitting at the meeting, but whatever comes along, I want whatever questions you have. If we are there or whatever, if you feel you need to know something or contact the town manager, feel free to do so.
Okay.
Because if there's some issue going on and we can resolve it or help things move along, I want to offer you that opportunity. So
I appreciate that.
Thank you for coming forward.
Thank you.
All right. Where do you see Killingly in the next 5, 10, and 20 years?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, especially once you start getting into 20-year planning, in my experience, you're just basically throwing something at the wall, right? The farther out you get, the more uncertainty there is and the more diversion you can have from what you think the path is going to look like. So I think part of what we would do as a vision committee is certainly develop that vision for what we think the town could be. But then the key is to be able to adjust, right? New information comes in and we need to be able to adjust that. To Ed's point, public opinion is going to make a difference there. So understanding what that is and coming up with a mechanism to capture that and to constantly have that updated to be able to understand where we are. Because I know from working with, like Fortune 2 companies that they don't have any idea what 5 or 10 or 20 years is going to look like down the road. So the best that we can do is put our best foot forward and try to put ourselves in a good position to look great in 5 years, and whatever that means by looking great. A lot of that could mean along the lines of conservation. A lot of that could mean along the lines of increasing business in the town. I personally love what's happening in the downtown area right now, where we have these new coffee shops and new restaurants, and the pedestrian aspect of that whole area has been wonderful to see over the last 10 years or so. Continuing that type of community development, all the events that have been happening in town over the last several years, even my 6-year-old daughter going from place to place on downtown Danielson, getting a piece of candy from all the local businesses, the farmers markets, all these things that make Killingly what it is, keeping that fabric of our community while also being able to kind of get ahead of what's coming, right? Because there's AI, there's quantum computing, there's who knows what is going to be happening in the next 20 years. But for us, it's going to be balancing those technological changes and what could ultimately affect the workforce, and especially the workforce in town, but then still kind of staying true to our roots and our history as well.
So do you have any ideas how you can encompass most of the residents of all the areas of the town in the Vision Committee's plans?
Well, in terms of gathering information, email really, to me, seems like the best way to do it. Certainly in person, and if people want to write letters or call us on the phone or whatever they need to do to be able to get a hold of us. But I would think email, just because everyone should have an email, or people could have access to email. They can go down to the library and they can use the computers and get their email. But it would be a way for us to reach out to them, and it would be a way for them to communicate back to us. And because it is electronic, it would be a good way for us to capture that information as well, and to be able to categorize and understand, okay, I see a theme here. So now we need to start to think about that. So let's talk about that at the next meeting.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the questions we have kind of been modified a little from what I thought, but when you think of Killingly, what, if you had to put it into 3 words or phrases, what would come to mind for you if you had to describe Killingly?
I don't know that I would put it into 3 phrases so much as I would put it into 1 phrase,
Okay.
and it's the best of both worlds. That's the way I kind of think of it.
Okay.
Because it does have that rural feel, and I can go out with my wife and daughter, and we can go for a hike on the weekends, and we can spend a bunch of time outside, and we can enjoy Owen Bell Park and take advantage of all the outdoor activities that a small town could provide. At the same time, I can walk down the street and walk in a Zip Diner and see Ed and say hi to everyone there, and that's right near my house. I can drive down to Killingly Commons and I say hi to everybody and Stop and Shop. And so we have all the amenities of a suburb, but all of the small town feel that Killingly has always had. So that's when I say best of both worlds. We kind of have that. It's the nice little niche that we're in.
So is there anything about that best of both worlds that you think could be modified or changed?
I think maintaining that fabric going forward would be a good approach.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to say I do agree with you. That was one of the things that drew me to Killingly when I moved here 14 years ago, was just the fact of you have both sides of it. You've got the rural parts of town, the quieter parts of town, but you have the amenities. You have your shopping. We do have restaurants around, and we've got the downtown and the parks. One of the things I thought of when I started pushing to establish a vision committee is to, in a sense, not just have something coming from the council, not have something coming from staff, but actually get the public to determine where they want to see this community going, and what ways the public feels we can strengthen what we already have. Not necessarily reinvent the wheel, even though there may be certain things we need to look at differently that we've never done to enhance our community, and then other ways to support what we do have, and just without having a guideline. I think having the vision committee come forward with this is the plan, it makes it easier for the council to know, okay, well, this is what the community wants, not just what we want as council members. And it makes it easier for us to get to that vision, get to that place where we want to see Killenly at, through the establishment of the vision committee.
Yeah.
Any other?
Yeah.
Mr. Gamatista.
Good evening, Joe. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Well, thank you for coming forward. I
Thank
greatly
you.
appreciate it. I think the one thing I like about this town the most is I always find that debate, it gets you to the best result. So the passion that we all have, we may want our little piece of it, but we're kind of all looking for the same thing. And the one thing that I found that it's consistent is I do think the fabric of the way the town feels, and I always say like we could be like a granola crunchy here. Like you come, you can hike, you could come and you could walk Main Street, you could have something to eat, you could create this communal where there is green, green areas. I just think all of that is kind of what I would like to see for the town. I like that part of it. It's close knit. You know most of the folks. A lot of us have been here for a long, long time. So I'll throw this one out. I'm just curious what for you, what lights your hair on fire? You're lucky to still have it, by the way. None of us have it.
It used to be red to talk about hair on fire.
There you go. So they've asked this. So importance to you in the town. We had a few things here: conservation, business, arts, music, veteran affairs, elderly affairs, and parks and rec. So the importance of those to you. These are all going to be personal. They'll go to, I didn't know what you did, but I like the planning aspect. I think if you're going to delve into something like this, you definitely want someone with some experience at forecasting. That's going to be an obvious part. I liked how quick you were to say that 20 years may be pretty tough. We're trying to look into a crystal ball. So of those things, what of those: conservation, business, arts, music, veteran affairs, elderly affairs, parks and rec? What hits it for you?
Yeah, and I was looking at that list because we did get those questions ahead of time, and thank you for that. And I was actually reviewing that over the last week or so, and I, quite frankly, wouldn't want to put one of those items in front of the other. I think it does have to be a balance, and especially as we're talking about a longer-term plan and a longer-term goal for the community, is that we don't want to neglect veterans as a result of business or vice versa, right? We need to be able to think about all those different parts of the community, because really when we're thinking about a long-term vision for Killingley, it's the people's vision, and that includes everyone on that list. And not to mention that there could be people that are on 3 or 4 of those bullet points, and so bucketing them in that way, I was a little leery to do that, because I really think all of those are important. And I know that's kind of a non-answer, but that's yeah.
It's fair enough. I don't think that's an easy question.
It actually almost sounds like you want to take those pieces, they're all part of that patchwork quilt.
Yeah.
That fabric that's Killingley is that patchwork.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like when I read Joe Courtney's newsletter every week, and he's been to the Veteran Coffee House, and I can see the picture, and so I saw the veterans on there, and I was like, yeah, that needs to continue, right? Like those are important things.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Hi, Mr. Markley. How are you?
Hi, Patty. Great. How are you?
Good. So I honestly believe you've answered all of my questions. And I thank you for that. What I am so motivated about Killingley is our future. You're right. It is the best of both worlds. We have rural and we have all these great little businesses popping up downtown. I like your positive energy. I like that you're not coming here with, we have to change this, we have to fix that. You are focused on taking what we already have as a beautiful little community and just improving it. So, thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate that, Patty, and I would just like to add that, my wife and I both work from home, and so that means we could live anywhere, and we choose to live here.
I work from home also and I homeschool, and I can completely appreciate that. I lived in Hawaii for a bit, years and years ago, pre-children, and I still came back here.
There you go. I was in Miami before I came back here, so there you go. Yeah.
Very nice. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions from council? I'm just going to throw one other thing out there because one of the questions we did have in the questions we sent out, and I know you had touched on the email as far as being number one as far as information gathering. If you had someone's attention for 30 seconds, how would you promote Killingley?
Yeah, and I think it gets back to the best of both worlds, right? It's this one place where you can go and be in nature, and then 5 minutes later you're at a mall, and then 20 minutes later you're in this quaint little downtown, and then I can hop on my bicycle and be down by the river, and I can do all that within one afternoon. And if I need to go to the beach, it's only an hour drive. If I need to go to the mountains, it's only an hour drive. If I want to go down to New York City, it's only a 3-hour drive. So I have all of these things at my disposal, but then in the end, I can go to my house, it's in the middle of the woods, nobody can see me at all, and I can just sit there and relax and listen to the birds, and that's one day. So you can spend a whole life doing that.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from council? All right, on behalf of the council, I just want to thank you for coming forward and showing interest in serving on the Vision Committee.
All right,
We'll
thank you
be voting on appointments, not next week, but after we get through all the interviews, which may be 2 months. So it may be April.
I think
We're
that
doing-
you'll probably get through in March, but it's possible.
Possible,
It might run
yeah.
over until
Yeah.
April, but
All right.
we're shooting for March.
All right. You know how to get a hold of me, email, right?
Yeah, got it.
All right, thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, moving on in the agenda, next item up is 3H. Richard Weinberg is seeking appointment to the Vision Committee.
This light's already on, so I'm going to switch chairs. I'm Richard Weinberg. I'm relatively new to Killingley, and the fact that I am new gives me a different perspective. But everything that Joe echoed is one of the reasons why I'm here today. I have a background in architecture and planning from RISD. I've worked in the city of Providence for Mayor Cianci in the planning department, and then in IT, so I'm very familiar with technology. I happen to think that Killingley is a very nice, compact town. I like the outdoors. We used to go walking with our dogs, but either in Putnam or down by the river right here, and it's just very, very exciting. And it's also very relaxing. And one of the so basically, it is the best of everything. We also have, I think it's Green Valley Transit that comes by. They go by my house, and I could actually get on a bus if I chose not to drive or broke my leg and couldn't drive, and end up in Killingley Commons, not to mention probably several other places. But it's just so convenient that my wife and I, we like it. We take advantage of a lot of the stores, the restaurants. I take advantage, or my wife and I take advantage of the YMCA up in Putnam. Technically, could be Killingley, but it's right over the border. And it's a nice resource. And having compared, one of the things that makes Killingly even better is the fact that I can compare it to a lot of different initiatives that happened in Rhode Island and different planning. I'm going to put planning initiatives that would go 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And none of the 20 years would ever work, just as Joe said. The 10 years, you had a little bit, but basically you move forward with what you can implement and you try to stay on top of it, and then you kind of readjust. The word fabric, I thought Joe might have been in architectural school, because that was a word that wasn't reserved for architects, but we always would talk about the fabric of a community, and the fabric is very important. There's a nice, what I would call streetscape, meaning as you're going down, it's not cluttered, it's very, very tranquil. And on the Vision Committee, one of the things I'd like to see is trying to make recommendations and implement things. Well, we don't really implement, but make recommendations that would be implementable if it was deemed appropriate by the zoning and the town council. I think it would be inappropriate of us to try to look at making recommendations to zoning if we don't have the expertise for that, because that really is separate. But we could make recommendations maybe as to the quality of life, open space. One of the things that I like about this town is actually the Conservation Committee. I thought they do a great job. I've been to their meetings, and of course I take advantage of the parks. I also believe that this town has a rich history. Like a true Rhode Islander, we used to give directions to, well, go down this road to the old Benny's, except now that I've been in Killingly and I'm at the Historical Society volunteering, I think I can also say, go down to where this old mill used to be. Of course, I never saw it, but the fact is I have that resource, and I spend my Wednesdays at the Killingly Historical Society helping to digitize and provide technology. I find it hard to believe that I'm the youngest person there, where I was the oldest, still am the oldest person, where I work just part-time at the Providence Housing Authority. So I've had a chance to see a lot of different entities and look forward to, well, one, we look forward to staying in Killingly. Our kids like it. They come to visit. And we saved the second floor for them. And we have 2 dogs, and they love it. They find plenty of squirrels, so. But I guess I really should answer questions, but one question that did come out, and I think you mentioned this, Tony, was how would you prioritize the different facets, such as parks and open spaces, veterans, planning, businesses, and from my experience, they're all interdependent. If we don't have a strong community, we don't have a good quality of life for any one of those facets, and we're not going to attract new businesses.
I'll just say on that question, you guys, it wasn't supposed to be priority. That's supposed to be a passion, and that would give us an idea. We might end up with 5 or 6 all different passions. So I think the question, we got the question wrong in here. That was my
passion would be open space, and the fact that it's so nice to be able to go outdoors, see people, talk. The dogs, they do their own type of communication. But I saw it as priorities, and maybe I misread it.
No, the question was in here, got a little messed up, but that was my question, so thank you.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
But I do think they're all interdependent. And in looking at a lot of previous studies and comments about this type of planning initiative, we're up against a lot of naysayers, because technically these type of committees don't work. So we have to be very careful with what we put forward, that it's not, quote, too visionary, but practical and take into account the the needs of the town or the wishes of the town people, and really act as a conduit to bring those forward to the respective groups. Because unto itself, we won't be making really any true decisions, but making recommendations. And I guess I should open this up to questions as everyone else did.
All right, now I will open up to council members. Mr.
I
Grandelski.
appreciate you coming forward. I appreciate, I've seen you at the conservation meetings. So you are engaged in the community and whatnot, and different parcels of it. So being on the, you're not part of the, they would like you to join the Conservation Commission, but you get your feelers out, and I think that's a very good thing. So I appreciate you coming forward for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any other ideas to engage the community otherwise, aside from emails?
Well,
Because we do have some people that don't like to give out their emails and their...
Well, a lot of people, don't like to put out their emails. However, the two ways. One is I found out about this also through the bargain buyer on a Wednesday. And so it doesn't mean that we couldn't advertise to the point where we state some of what the priorities of what we're doing, and also give people the opportunity to sign up for an email, or maybe to find a section on the town website and post the different directions that we're going in, and give the constituent an opportunity to come back. One of the things that I would like to do for the Vision Committee is act more like a resource to all the respective groups that it breaks down into. I have a very strong background in GIS, which is spatial database programming. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with ArcGIS. And so over the last few weeks, I downloaded from Deep a lot of the town data, including the parcels, the zoning. So I'm able to take a map and help show people, let's say, vacant land, value of land, and different zonings, and let them make the decisions. So I think I can be a very useful resource to the rest of the committee without having to make individual recommendations myself. And I happen to, of course, enjoy working with computers. And
Thank you.
So my question to Joe was about what three things, if you would describe Killenly, and I think just in your explanation on why you came forward and what you like, I think you answered that question. If there was anything that you could change, is there something that we could be doing
I think there's
better?
one particular building, a mill over in Danielson that should come down.
Well,
But that's about the only eyesore.
Get in line with EPA and DEEP and,
Yeah, no, I understand that. There's not
About
one
three of them,
specific
actually.
item I would change, because so much of it is convenient and fun. When friends come to visit or young kids, we go off to the park, and they get to play at Owen Bell. If other friends come, we might go hiking up on
Old Furnace.
Old Furnace, thank you. And it just is so much so close. And it's just a great town. And having moved here 3.5 years ago and seeing all the problems that I left behind, and that's not why we left Rhode Island, but I wouldn't want to do anything different. And I'd like to see that sentiment gets echoed in the vision plan so that it can continue to maintain the character and fabric of what it has become. And of course, I've seen what it has been through all the different festivals from the Historical Society.
The Historical Society.
Well, I'm working with digitizing their collection.
They're a great resource to see
Oh, it's amazing.
where we've been.
And even found pictures of plans of Cat Hollow's potential expansion back in 2007. And I forwarded those to the Conservation Commission as well as to Allison. And but no, there's a lot of good things that can come from the committee and hopefully make recommendations that other entities here would want to follow.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy?
Patty?
Yeah?
No.
Ms. George, did you have any questions?
Oh, I apologize. I thought you were calling on Michelle.
No.
Hi, Mr. Weinberg. How are you?
Good, thanks, Patty. How are you?
Good. So I think, again, we've answered all of my questions. I like what you said about, so my questions were the top one, the three things that you like about Keaton. You've answered that tantamount. And you brought up PRIM, which is a big eyesore for us, and the state's involved now. So we'll do what we can in a supportive role there. But I like what you brought up about the GIS, because my other question was about why you wanted to be on the Vision Committee and what your primary role would be. So I think your experience and your knowledge in GIS would be a really good asset for that committee. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's nice to see fresh eyes. You said you've only been here 3 years, but it seems like you've taken a lot of initiative and jumped right into everything, the Historical Society and, sending information on the Cat Hollow expansion. So thank you so much, sir.
No, I think it's a great committee, great community, and a lot of great restaurants.
Ms. Murphy?
So I just had a quick question. It's kind of silly. Did you say you worked for Buddy Cianci?
I did.
Did you know him? Could you tell us
Yes.
a 30-second story about Buddy Cianci?
The interesting thing about Buddy is what I see is about Buddy Cianci versus what the public sees. I never saw any corruption. I actually saw a visionary and was actually sitting. He actually asked, because I was in the planning, to go to some of the first meetings about relocating the river. And he did it from a very practical standpoint. And I just thought that was fantastic. So I learned a lot, but also, I wasn't the one sitting as a juror, and I would have been too biased because I never saw any corruption. And then
The people I hear love him. That's why I
no, he
kind of-
was
yeah.
he was a good person. As a matter of fact, it was Buddy. You could approach Buddy, and I actually created the first municipal website in Providence because I knew how to program, and I pitched the idea to Buddy Cianci, and he didn't know what a website was, and we launched it, and so I had to go by the seat of my pants, so to speak, and figure out what we should put on it because none of the departments were computerized, not like we have today. And 6 months later, we launched it, and just similar to a lot of the commercials, every single press, well, I can't say every TV station, every newspaper came to Buddy's office, and we projected on a TV what the website was. And so he was willing to take chances, and that was an initiative that worked very, very well. And, finally they're on their own 2 feet. But, yeah, no, I have nothing but good things to say. You're welcome.
Thank you. I'll just throw out the same question that I threw out to Mr. Markley. If you had somebody's attention for 30 seconds, how would you promote Killenly?
Well, I don't even know if it would take 30 seconds. One I would say is it's a great community. I have all the amenities I need close by, and I can be outdoors and enjoy the open space. And there's nothing that I think I'm lacking in community service or community. I have a septic system. I do have town water, but the roads are taken care of. And I was very impressed with the bus system too. A lot of communities have buses, but not quite the one where I could actually just get on at my house.
Okay.
So, basically, yeah. It's just a great community.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? You have anything further for us?
No, I
Okay.
just think it's good to see so many different committees going forward. I mean, Conservation Committee, I just find quite rewarding. And the different people who are on it, the different initiatives that they create. And then, of course, the Historical Society, I think, is an excellent, excellent resource.
Okay. All right. I want to say thank you for coming forward and expressing interest in serving on a vision committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on the agenda, next item up is item 3I. Cody Ouellette is seeking appointment to the Vision Committee.
Hello.
Hello.
So, yeah, my name's Cody Ouellette. I've been a New England native my whole life, born and raised in the quiet corner, bounced around between Chaplin, Wyndham, Plainfield, Killingly. So I'm used to this area. I love this area. It's the best, in my opinion, it's the best place to live, for sure, because of what Joe Rich has said. It's close. You can go to the beach, you can go to hiking, the mall, go get something to eat, all in the same day. It's great when you have kids because you're not going for like long drives everywhere. You can just kind of have a full day without being too exhausted. I'm a proficiency. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a proficiency developer for electric boat, which basically just means I develop curriculum for inside machinists, CNC machinists. I'm a liaison with electric boat to QVCC manufacturing, so I spend a lot of time working with the guys in QVCC. We have a post-employment training that electric boat uses QVCC for. So I spend time there, a lot of communication back and forth, developing curriculum, just building up the workforce. I've been a machinist my whole life, so it's just my passion to be able to freely give what was given freely to me. Yeah, so that's my intro.
All right. I will open up to council members for questions, comments.
I'm grateful that you came forward. I guess you have a lot of background that would be useful. And again, if anything's going on, if you're on the committee, you have a question to ask us, any of the boards or commissions, I guess feel free to ask it, because we want all the info we can get, and we want your participation, and I'm glad you came forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask the same question about how you can engage the entire or most of Killingly, because it is nearly 50 square miles of
Yeah.
people, and some people want to be in the left alone category.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, constant communication is key. So if you think you're communicating too much, you're not. I found this through Facebook. Social media is the way for younger families, younger people. It's social media's way. That's how I found out about this Vision Council meeting. I was like, yeah, wow, cool, If you have Microsoft 365, you can use QR codes and surveys and have direct, private, anonymous surveys and questionnaires given out. You can put it on the website. You can put it on Facebook. You can just put a QR code on a bulletin somewhere. You can pass it out. But I think that's a really effective way to have a survey to ask the public things, and they can still remain anonymous if they don't want to put in their email address or name or anything like that. And what's great about that is it can generate graphs. It can generate data, and because I'm a firm believer in data as well. That it's easy to make decisions that way. And so yes, I didn't want to give out my secrets because I wanted to, get on the board first. But yes, my 2 cents would be if you got Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Forms, surveys. It's easy. It just requires consistency and accessibility and user friendliness. That it's quick. It's quick. It's a 10-question survey on your phone or on your computer, and you just hit submit, and now you got the information that you need, whatever it is. If it's a rating, if it's vote, if you wanted some direct democracy, right? If you wanted to vote on something, or not, unofficially, but, what do you value, right? You can get those answers like that. And so you'll be able to make decisions quickly that way, so.
Thank you. Other questions? Ms. Wakefield?
So, same one I asked the others, if you had to describe Killingly in like 3 phrases or words, what would they be?
Rooted in heritage, for sure. And as part of like a vision, so vision's forward thinking, right? So I want to describe Killingly the way that, according to a vision, right? And I want to say stronger in purpose. That's what, united together, rooted in heritage. There's a lot of history, with this town. There's a lot of community in this town. There's trades, right? There's sports. There's a huge sports community. Very passionate. It's really cool. It's great. Those are my phrases, right? I don't know.
Well, we are over 300 years old, so
Yeah.
there's definitely some heritage around it running through here.
James Danielson. He was a indentured servant that came over from Ireland, I think it was, or Scotland, founded the place.
Anyways, the last of the Danielson family has passed, so, would there be anything that you would want to change?
Yeah, so I would like to prioritize young families. I don't know, I don't know how many of us in the room have married households with children under 18, but that's who I want to represent, that advocate for, is advocating for young families to get rooted here, to be stable here, because it is a great place to raise kids. And one of the things that I would like to see would be the reimagined rec center. Indoor, winter, in New England is very boring. The kids are out, so getting them more involved with more children-oriented activities. Indoor playscapes are a thing. So just reimagining more, like to be more in season all the time, in all seasons, type of thing. That's what I'd like to see. Because I love the other parks. I love Owen Bell. I love Cat Hollow. I love the dog park. We go there, but they're great in the summer. Maybe fall, spring, but wintertime, it's still, what else can we do?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Ms. Murphy?
I'll just read this question. Now, this question, this is my fault. Jason takes such care in sending these things out to us, and I did not read it. So the purpose of this question, this is all my fault. I didn't read what Jason sent to me, is what is your passion of these 5 or 6 things? Conservation, business, arts and music, veterans affairs, elderly affairs, parks and rec.
Yep.
You already answered
Parks
that
and
one.
Rec,
Yeah.
conservation, arts, music, business, veterans, elderly.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
And one thing I just want to, I know I had brought this up before when we were setting this up. I would definitely encourage all the council members to, as we go through this process, go back and review the candidates' interviews. Because as we get further on, the interviews from tonight might not be as fresh in our minds. So I definitely encourage all of us to go back over and review these, especially, I'm taking notes. I can't take notes as fast as people are speaking, so I know there's things that no need to apologize. No need to apologize whatsoever. And there also may be things where I'm taking notes down that my brain is disconnected from what someone's saying, and I always apologize for that. I'm just trying to take my notes at the same time. But I do encourage everyone to go back over and review all these interviews as we get closer to the end. So I will say, if you had someone's attention for 30 seconds, what would you say or do to promote Killenly? And I did like the idea of QR codes for surveys and questionnaires. I think that
Yeah.
it's one way to reach people that it may be a different way, that especially for the younger generation, a better way to engage them.
Yeah, if I had 30 seconds, if you're looking for a place to plant your family for the long haul that has access to the best, the shopping, so you don't have to drive 30, 40 minutes to get your stuff, and if you're like me, who might forget something because you didn't make a list, right? You can just kind of go back. If you want to go hiking, it's a great place to just raise your family at the end of the day. It is. And if I had 30 seconds, that's what it would be.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. We'll now move on. Next item on the agenda, Mr. Chapman unfortunately is feeling under the weather and was unable to come to interview tonight, so we'll move on to 3K. Fred Ru-
Can I just say something?
Yes.
I received and I apologize, Mr. Willett, I didn't get to question you, but I'm sure I will in the future. Mr. Chapman reached out this morning, and he's under the weather, like you said, but he sent his apologies, and he is looking forward to being with us next month in March. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on. Yes.
Can you come back up, since Patty might have a question?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's
It's all right.
Hey, yeah.
That's good. Being that you're the younger generation.
Hello.
Yeah.
So, a few things. One, you talk as fast as I do, so I can relate to them not being able to take all notes, but I took shorthand, so I'm keeping up. Couple things you mentioned, the indoor playground. I like that. I just got back from Huntsville with my little guy, who is 10, and he would have rather spent every day at the multitude of different indoor playgrounds than visit with his cousins, who we were there for a birthday party. So that is definitely a concept that I have talked about with friends and other families. I think coming up with more things on the Vision Committee for children to do is a great idea. And the opportunity with our new rec center starting up is something I would love to see you guys focus on.
Cool. Yeah, nice.
So being that
And I also like the QR codes.
Being that you're the younger generation, can you give me like a 30-second snippet of what you see Killingley in 5 years with population, industrial business? What
What do I want to see? What do I want to see?
What would you like to see?
In 5 years?
5 years.
Moving forward, developing, making this place accessible for young families more. A younger demographic, younger families, more, families, family-oriented, safety, clean, right? The trades are great. That needs to continue building up. The tradesmen at Ellis Tech, QVCC, and the 20-year, if you want, nationally recognized town for self-sustaining growth. That was my 20-year. If you dream big, right? I don't know.
That's everybody's dream.
Yeah, but if we have the vision, we can do it. But yeah, just making moves towards that. 5 years goes quick, but making moves towards that developing of kind of orienting development that remains rooted in the heritage. So not changing the culture or but orienting it to serve young families and young people, to make it accessible for them to own a home and to have a piece of land where they can just settle down and just
So,
stay.
So affordable.
Affordable. With at least 1 acre.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, so we'll move on to item 3K. Mr. Rulerman is seeking appointment to the Vision Committee. Welcome. If you could just tell us a little bit about why you're seeking appointment to the Vision Committee.
I'm kind of in the middle, you know. Several people who are here 2 years, 3 years. Some people been here all their lives. I've been living on Mashantuck Road for 35 years. I plan on dying on Mashantuck Road. All right? What I like is when I walk out my back door, I can see everything from a black bear to I had a bobcat with 2 kits there this spring. I see coyotes, I've seen fishers, everything. Yet, if I feel like walking, it's about a mile to downtown. So when you talk about the best of 2 worlds, I've got it. And I hope to see the town improve what we have, not lose anything. There's been mention about downtown, the new restaurants, the coffee shops. Downtown is much better than it was 20 years ago. I like to see that improve, but I don't want to lose my ruralness either. You know, we have, if you look around just this quiet corner, if you go just north of us to Putnam, great downtown, basically nothing else. No, you go to Brooklyn, a lot of open space, not much downtown. Same thing, you go to Sterling. Plainfield, it's not as classy as we are. What we have is a great town, a really great town. Like I said, I've been living on Mashantuck Road 35 years, and I'm going to stay there until they either take me out in a funeral thing or into the old folks' home, you know? It's a perfect town.
All right. Thank you. I will open up for questions.
So Fred, I'm going to ask you the same question. So we've got how to capture the attention of the younger people. What about people that don't have cell phones and internet and...
I don't think there's too many people that don't have a cell phone. I work with a lot of old people. Some of them still have flip phones, but most of them have phones. But I do know people that don't have adequate computers. So I think that the internet's a good way, email's a good way, the QR codes, you know what? If you talk to somebody over 50 years of age, unless they're still in business, they don't even know what a QR code is. Okay? I still think you have to talk to people. You have to talk to people. I love the internet. I'm on it because of what I do. I'm on the internet. The first thing I do in the morning is get a cup of coffee and sit down at my computer. I do 40 emails every morning. But I think that, especially with the older generation, you need face-to-face contact.
All right. Thank you.
I like to talk with my mouth and not with my fingers myself.
Well, I talk with my hands when I'm talking with my mouth. And I'm not even Italian.
No, French do it too.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hey.
Fred. I'm going to jump right in.
Okay. How are you?
How are you?
I'm good.
I'm so happy to see that you are coming forward to be a part of this important vision commission. I think you, sir, are one of the most important and most respected and integral parts of this community. And that's not even saying enough. So what do you see? I know we're focused on, conservation and younger families, and I love all of those comments, but you know me, and I know what you do every single day of your life. So what do you see in Killingly over the next 5 to 10 years? What can the Vision Committee do, bring recommendations for us to improve the lives and the quality of life for our seniors and our veterans?
Like I was saying, we need to improve what we have. You know, downtown 20 years ago, 15 years ago, if you were a young woman or an older woman, you didn't walk downtown alone after dark.
Right.
You didn't. It was a scary place. It's gotten better. We need to keep improving that. We've improved some of the lighting, we've improved the sidewalks. We have a small police force. We've made improvements downtown. There are more places to go downtown. We need to keep improving that. We also need to keep the recreation areas that we have. The mention of young people. You know, there's nothing better than taking a kid. Every kid you know is playing video games. There's nothing better than taking your kid for a hike in the fresh air in the spring. Nothing better than taking your child fishing in the spring, you know? We need to improve those areas as well. We have nice recreation areas. They need to have better hiking areas. They need to have better lighted parking areas so people are not afraid to go there. But we need to improve those recreational facilities, especially for the young people that the fellow before me was talking about. Young families, that's a beautiful way to spend a nice May day. You don't have to spend any money. Take your kids for a walk.
Agreed. Thank you very much.
And I also advocate for veterans, you know that.
Just a little. Thank you, sir, for all you do.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr.
So, Thank you
Grandelski.
for coming forward. I know you do a lot at the Veterans Coffee House, so that's a big part of it, but overall, you can bring that in. You know, people talk about the young folks, you can talk about the older folks. We have a cross-section, and hopefully we can appeal to everybody.
The town needs to do things for young people because that's how towns grow. But you also need things for the old people because that's where the memories are, that's where the learning is, that's where, you know, there's a lot of information out there. We need to provide places for the old people as well.
Thank you.
So I've served with you in multiple capacities over the years. I'm not going to ask you what three, because that would be just really difficult to try it. For me to come up with the three things when I think of Killingly, I think a lot of what the others have thrown out have been pretty much what I would. But if you had to narrow it down to the three things that you liked about Killingly,
I would say, I live on Mashantuck Road. Come to my house. Because I'm telling you, I've got the best part of town. You know, I would talk, if I had three things to say, I would talk about the improvements downtown. Mm-hmm. If you want to have a cup of coffee on a Saturday morning, there's a coffee shop. If you want to go to a restaurant, there's a new, I haven't been there yet, the one where Deb's old place was. I haven't been in there yet. I mean, that's, where else do you, in a little town, where do you find a restaurant like that? You know, and then I would talk about the ruralness, the parks that we have, the places where you can walk. You know, if I walk out up over the ledge in my backyard, I can walk all the way to 101. Hundreds of acres. It's a beautiful town.
well, I mean, you definitely, like Patty said, you definitely have your fingers in with the veterans and the elderly. Conservation, I know that's what you did for a living.
That's what I did for a living. I was a state conservation officer most of my adult life. I know a lot about the outdoors.
So, and honest with you, when you were talking about things for the elderly, one of the things that falls into that Parks and Rec.
Yes.
They have really phenomenal, well-attended elderly programming.
That's another plus about the town. There are a lot of really good people working in this town.
There are.
Yes.
Well, I'm just glad to have you come forward. I think you'll be a great asset to this vision committee, because you know where we've been, you know where we probably should go, and you've got plenty of influence with different groups throughout town.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you. I'm actually going to hijack Michelle's question and put a little bit of a spin on it. Instead of rating the importance of the following things, which were conservation, business, arts and music, veterans affairs, elderly affairs, parks and rec, of those 6, is there one that you feel needs to be promoted more than it currently is over the others?
Can I do more than one?
Yes, absolutely.
I think the PBA, or it's not PBA, it's in Putnam, the Killingly Business Association is growing. And they've got some wonderful people leading the Killingly Business Association. I think that is one of the things that is going to continue to improve. I think that's very important. I think obviously the conservation and the Parks and Rec is important, because we need places for young kids to go. We need places for people like me to take a walk. We need places, we need to do some more stuff down in Owen Bell Park. You know, you get the American Legion baseball down there. You know, we could improve the seating down there. We could improve the field a little bit. I would say, I would hope that the Killingly Business Association will continue to strengthen, because I think it's got good leadership. And I think we should strengthen the Killingly Parks and Recreation.
Okay, thank you. I apologize, Michelle, for stealing your question.
That was not my question.
Well.
It's a good question, though, that's fine.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
Look at her, she's over there smiling, she hasn't said a thing.
I already know your passion. The question was supposed to be, what's your passion? That's all right.
Well, we all know my real passion is veterans. I live for it.
I thought it was Buddy Cianci.
Actually, I know a different Cianci that runs a veterans coffee house in Rhode Island. He's not Buddy's kid, but he's related. And there's no corruption there either.
It's Rhode Island.
Any other questions from council? I do want to say thank you for coming forward and expressing interest in serving on the Vision Committee. And I do want to thank you for everything you do for our local veterans. It's very important that we support them.
Yeah. For me, I would like very much to be on the Vision Committee. Like I said, I've lived 35 years on Mashantuck Road. I plan on dying on Mashantuck Road. I'll be 76 in a few days. My father lived to be 97. I'm planning on being here a while. And I want to see this town better all the time. And if I can do anything to help, I want to be part of it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we will now move on in the agenda. We've gotten through the interview portion of this meeting, so we move on to item 4, citizen statements and petitions. We just ask that any comments that you make be relative to the items on this evening's agenda, which were the interviews, and then we'll have new business after on meeting with the WPCA and also Economic Development Commission. Did we have anything submitted?
No comments were submitted.
Thank you. Last call for public comments. Seeing none, we'll move on. Oh, wait, no, sorry.
Sorry, moving slow tonight.
It's all right. And I was actually going to say, if it's easier for you, have a seat rather than standing at the podium, feel free to.
Thank you.
Normally I say step up to the podium.
Thank you. My name is John LaBelle, 57 Island Road, Dayville, Connecticut. I'd like to sample your water to see what you're drinking over there, because I'd like to have that kind of
Irish whiskey.
that kind of one gentleman here gave you a logo. So much, so near. That really rings a bell. So much, so near. If you look at this, you wonder how people have time to do all this stuff. But this is fantastic. Parks and Recreation has got to be the best that I've ever seen in all the communities I've been in over the years. I was looking through it, and they don't miss a beat, from children to military and people who passed in the military. I'm not sure how to make the connection. Most of what I brought was to make everyone aware that this falls under conservation. So that on the 6th, there is a meeting of the State Siting Council to entertain a motion to open up the NTE permit because they can't find it. Well, these are my markings on one page.
All right. As I stated, Mr. LaBelle, just if you can find a way to keep whatever you're saying pertinent to the items on this evening's agenda, with it being a special town council meeting.
I think that what I have to say is pertinent in terms of conservation. We have a facility that's proposed that will have a serious impact on the quality of air that we breathe. And for those of you who are interested, participate on the 6th in the hearings that they have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have the specific name of the hearing? Because you can usually sign up online.
You can go online.
Connecticut Siting Council docket 47DB.
Oh, I want to thank everyone for coming forward here. My God, you all were very impressive, and I hope that you managed to get on that commission.
Last call for public comment. Just got to ask that you state your name and address,
Sure.
please.
My name is Peter Deary, 20 Arrowhead Lane, Dayville, Connecticut. I spoke last month about the moratorium, and the reason I came tonight, as I see on the agenda that the David from the WPCA is going to be talking, and I just want to make the point that I saw Mary at one of the senior citizens events at the rec center in Killingley here. Did a wonderful job. Explained an awful lot about Frito-Lay and what's going on with the moratorium, and was also told that even if we did get the $40 million that we would like to raise to fix the problem there, it would be 5 years before that would be completed. And I can't imagine that we can go 5 years with not allowing homes, businesses, industry to hook up to the sewer system. And I understand that the Frito-Lay contract is due, and they're in negotiations now, and I'm sure they're doing a great job. But we cannot go 5 years without hooking up. So somehow Frito has to step up to the plate and something needs to be done where their filtration system, their nutrients aren't sent to the plant. I know they're doing filters now, I know they're filtering an awful lot of it, but still too much of it is getting to the system here. So that's my 2 cents, and I'm anxious to see what we have to say tonight going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Last call for public comment.
Can I have a second whack at it? Thank you, Peter. I didn't see that item on the agenda. The wastewater treatment plant. It seems as though, I'm not sure if I'm misreading this or not, but recently there have been opportunities for funding applications with the DEP. We have missed those opportunities. I'd also like to see the negotiations with the Frito-Lay opened up to the public. I don't know why we have to keep these negotiations behind closed doors. They should be open to the public, and they should have another member on there that is technically oriented, like this gentleman that just spoke who's an architect. We really need to do what the public sees us doing. My big thing is transparency, and to take 5 years to resolve this issue is beyond my understanding, way beyond my understanding. The Mashantuckets built a wastewater treatment plant in about 9 months. I'd like also to see what options we are looking at in terms of, if Frito-Lay is such a good company, get the president of PepsiCo up here to sit down and negotiate that. Negotiations come out much differently when you've got the head of the corporation driving the vote for them. And there's a lot of rumors out there as to the impact of the influent and the effluent on the plant. Let's not reinvent the wheel. My last comment is, we've got an RFP that's gone out, and if you look at the RFP, it'll be July before we've got a viable engineer, if you follow that process. Probably be September by the time you've awarded it. Probably be another 6 months before the new engineer will be up to speed on this project. I would encourage you to look at all that time. You've got an engineer who has 150 drawings right now on that project. For a new engineer to go through all those drawings and then get up to speed and understand how the plant is run. All those drawings show is pumps and pipes and everything else. That doesn't tell me how the plant is run. That doesn't tell me where the opportunities are. That doesn't tell me where the waste is. That doesn't tell me where the new technology is today that came out since those drawings were done. So I would strongly encourage that you find a way to hire the engineer who already knows so much about that facility and get going with what needs to be done and set an objective of what's happening, what's new, what's out there, and talk with people who have plants that are modern and modernized, what opportunities are out there, and also, you know, you've got corporations throughout the world that have a lot of money. There's trillions of dollars of money out there just waiting to be taken advantage of. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Last call for public comment. All right, we'll move on in the agenda. We have nothing for old business. We'll move on to 6A, new business, meeting with WPCA and staff liaison Dave Capascione.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
What's everybody doing tonight? Joining us tonight, I'm sure you know Patrick McLaughlin, the chairman of the WPCA, and Joseph Higgins, the vice chair.
Good evening.
All right, well, thank you for having us tonight. Not sure how you want to proceed, or if you have...
Just start with what's been going on. Any developments as far as moratorium? I know you can't really talk much about the free-to-lay contracts because it's...
Correct, yeah.
Yep.
The RFQ is due back on the 25th of this month, at which point in time we'll begin the selection process with the members of the sewer authority and plant staff as well as town staff. And then interviews will proceed, and we'll get going with the selection of our design firm. We did submit an application on time to the Clean Water Fund. We are exploring other options. One of the options that we had looked for, that we had not looked at, but when we met before Christmas with Joe Courtney and his office, his staff, they had outlined some funding opportunities that were available. Started down that road. There's a $25,000 application fee. No guarantee of acceptance, non-refundable, and then when you get to the credit check, there's another $200,000 donation. Again, so we are exploring funding
And
options.
No guarantees on any award whatsoever for that. That's the first part, but it ends up being a total of $250,000 just to get into the entry of the application process
And
with no certainty of any award.
Is that how they
It's
fund it?
Non-refundable. I'm not, it's an EPA program. And it's basically a loan that they give you.
Yeah.
Fluctuates, it's been as high as 6% right now, it's a little over 3%. But it depends on when you close. Of course, the credit check that you have to pay, it depends on the size of the project, how much money you're asking for, drives the cost. There are other opportunities we're exploring as well. But the congressional earmarks and the community investment fund is probably going to be our best option, I think.
And Dave has compiled a list that I'll be providing to you for next week. So that way you just have it in a list format, so you're not trying to write down all of the acronyms on these.
There's
quite
confusing.
Is that what it's to?
Pretty much, yes. I did my best to make it so I could understand it anyway. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer it, but it's everything comes with strings attached. There's no free lunch, I'm afraid, in this business. But in any case, other than that, we're doing whatever we can to secure a fund, and clearly it's going to take some time.
The other thing that I just wanted to bring up with regards to, there was a part of the comments from Mr. LaBelle was with regards to, the RFQ process that we're going through. All of these funding sources that we're seeking require that RFQ process. So we would potentially be ineligible for funding if we just proceeded with the existing engineer services that we've been doing. So that's part of the state and federal requirements. So that's why we have to go through this process. And it has to be competitively bid. It's a qualifications process, so we are required to select the most qualified firm and then negotiate pricing on that. That's the requirements in order to be able to meet the eligibility, availability of the most potential funding sources. So we're trying to kind of keep our avenues as wide open as possible for funding opportunities in order to be able to submit and seek for future reimbursements.
That is correct. That's a good point. Thank you.
I do have one question I'm going to throw out there because I've been hammered on this one multiple times, especially with the whole NTE project that is, citing council looking to reopen the docket. Originally, when that was approved for, being built, it was, I believe it was 250,000 gallons a day if they were running on diesel that they would be supplying, basically feeding into the sewer plant. The question that keeps getting brought up to me is, with them not with that project being dead now, where did that 250,000 gallons of capacity, daily capacity, go?
Essentially, that's a fair question. Essentially, the water that they were discharging was coolant water.
Yeah.
So there's really no organic load at all on it.
Okay.
Outside of the staff
So it was
that
just
worked there.
because there was no organic load in it?
Correct. It was
Okay.
just purely coolant water.
Yeah.
It was not wastewater.
Yeah.
In the normal sense of the word.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
I'd just rather hear it from you. That way, when I get asked again, I can say, this is,
It's a fair question.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will open up to other council members. Mr. Grandelski.
We talked about these two funding sources, the application fee and the 250,000 credit check and all of that, but that's just through the EPA. Is that the same scenario when we were looking at Blumenthal and Murphy's projects, so that's another avenue?
That's a different funding source, yeah. That's the congressionally.
Delegated spending, CDS.
Yeah, correct. It's the WIFIA project that I'd alluded to with the high fees was what Courtney's office had spoke about when they toured the plant before Christmas.
But looking at these, time is of the essence, so that's
I agree.
another factor, so, I don't know how that plays out with this, but with the timing factor, or is this a better avenue that we invest some more money up front and try to get
Do you mean to go with the WIFIA funding project?
well, again, I'm, like,
It is an option, but again, there's no guarantee of acceptance into the program,
And it's a loan.
and it's a loan.
So the users of the system would bear the full cost of that, with that capital cost. So I think we want to be cognizant of that debt burden that we would bring to the users. And that's why we're trying to seek the earmark funding, the federal earmark funding as well. And I've had conversations at the state level to look at being able to demonstrate state contribution or state funding possibility into the project as well, because I know that that's an avenue. They want to see kind of a complete investment. So, but the WIFIA project would all be borne by the users ultimately, if that were the project that we were to go down. And again, investing a large amount of money with no real indication that you're going to even be accepted into the project is a really high risk.
because everywhere I go, like it was said today, 5 years, and there's no way that it's gonna be less than 5 years, but I mean, it's kinda in my face, that why does it take so long? And I can't explain it away, very difficult. I've been at your meetings and whatnot, and it takes time to do all of this stuff.
Well, I don't know if this will help or not, but anything we do at the wastewater plant, as far as a significant improvement, modification, or change, requires authorization and approval from the state.
Right.
We can't just, I mean,
No, that's what I
if we
understand.
change a pump or something, well, that's, one
No,
thing.
but how do we gotta sell this, that this is, it's not something that we can do overnight, and that's kind of
Correct.
what. I
And,
can't
you know,
I can't make it go
one-
away,
one of-
so I'd love
just
to do that.
To kind of expound upon the application that we submitted to the state for the Clean Water Fund. One is for what they call a planning grant, which, if we're selected, and I think that we will, touch wood, is eligible for 55% grant. And as part of a design, you have to plan what you're going to do anyway. So that will help fund that part.
Right, no.
But, because you have to, I mean, we gotta decide what we're gonna build. What are our goals? What are we trying to achieve? That'll be the first part of the design. And then after that, once we get going, maybe if we have a project that is designed and we're ahead of somebody else that has more priority points, maybe the state will put money towards this project. That's happened in the past for other communities. I can't guarantee that it will happen here, and I don't want to give anybody false hope, but it's an avenue. So again, I don't know if that helps to.
No, it's just something that we are doing something, but the people that talk to me, and they don't, of course, the price tag, again, that's not etched in stone yet. That's still a variable number, how we get to that point. So they look at, we gotta pay that too, but then again, 5 to maybe more years out, what's going on? So if you can,
Well,
they think we're not doing anything. That's
well,
what
if we started design today, which I think we just established, we're a couple of months out before we get to actual design. I don't think we're that far out, but it's not going to happen in February, that's for sure. You're probably looking at 2 years in design. By the time you go through your design, your approvals with the state, and all of that. That's just to get an approved plan in place. And that's if everything goes smoothly. And then we'll go out, then we have to secure funding. And then you go out to bid, and then you're probably another couple of years in construction. So, again, it's not I know that's not what you want to hear, but that's the reality of it.
Well, that's what I say, we've got to put this out there, that's the reality. Let's help things along, because I feel like in some respects I'm out there, but if you guys can promote that. This is on TV tonight, a lot of our meetings at the sewer plant are not, so we have an audience out there, and we got to emphasize that we can't do this overnight.
I have a question. Does the council understand why we entered into the moratorium? Does everybody on here understand?
I think it would help if you could explain that, especially for the public who may be listening, who isn't able to watch the WPCA meetings.
Okay. Essentially, we're at capacity at the facility for the strength of our wastewater that's coming in. The tanks were designed in the 70s. Well, the whole plant was designed in the 70s, built in 1974, if I remember correctly. As time has gone on, the permit limits have changed. The plant was originally designed as an 8 million gallon a day plant. We cannot meet 8 million gallons a day and meet our discharge limits, again, which have changed over the years. The nitrogen nutrient numbers, our discharge limits for nitrogen, phosphorus, TSS, total suspended solids, and biochemical oxygen demand have changed over the years. As those numbers have decreased, our ability to treat the wastewater and meet our discharge permit has gone down. We did a facilities plan in 2013, if I remember correctly. And at that point in time, based on the permit limits that were coming through from the state and the flows and loads at the facility, and by flows and loads, I mean the volume of the wastewater coming in and the nutrients coming in, they had projected that we would potentially get to 2035 before we would need to do upgrades. And by upgrades, they had added more clarifiers, bigger tanks. The tanks that are there now are rectangular in shape, which was the standard in 1974. Since then, they found that taller circular tanks give you better results. So again, even in 2013, there was talk about the addition of secondary clarifiers. So that's what was, the solution is still the same. Whether there's different membranes or technology that would be added, that would be part of the design. So again, I don't know if that helps or not.
So, if I could add a little bit, the reason we're in the moratorium is because our operator can't operate the plant correctly to to the way it should be operated. He can't take down trains, he can't clean, that he needs to do regular maintenance that needs to be done. So we're at our capacity, but we're at capacity because of nutrient, not because of volume. So we could take more volume, but the nutrient load coming to our plant is too large for our plant to be able to operate correctly. So that's why we went into the moratorium.
Okay.
How long have you been at capacity?
That's a good question.
We have been approaching capacity, again, since 2013. We have never, ever since I've been here, which is over 20 years, we've never been able to treat 8 million gallons a day effectively.
8 million gallons is your peak, right? It's not your average?
That's our rating of the facility.
Yeah, is it average design or peak design?
That's the average design.
What are you at now per year, your average?
Roughly 3.
3 million?
Roughly 3.
So you're-
3.2.
What do you think, what are they saying your average you can handle?
3.2.
3.2. Because of
Well,
solids in the contact chamber.
we
Because, I'm going to tell you why I'm confused. I'm just going to tell you, I never have disputed that you're at capacity. Because when I first walked in there, the guy said they couldn't keep the solids in the tank. And you know, legitimate design flaw, hydraulic design flaw. But then the report, the capacity study, which was 8 pages long, is based on a mixed liquor of 3,400 milligrams per liter, and you can never get close to that because you can't keep the solids in the tank. And yet, you're still not violating. In other words, hydraulically, you're underperforming, and process, you're overperforming.
Correct.
Right? So the moratorium saying 80,000 gallons per day, to me, doesn't really make sense. Because it's based on that mixed liquor. You don't ever get near the mixed liquor. Your real problem that you told me 3 years ago is you can't keep it in the tank. Now, why I'm a little bit more confused about why, and you know I've disagreed with the strategy once I understood what was happening. Not that you're at capacity, but normal progression for other facilities is you start to have that difficulty. When I asked about when did you start to have to clean the contact chambers every 2 weeks, in the last meeting you said 15 years ago.
Well, let me
Yeah,
expand on some of this just a bit. Going back to the MLSS number in the capacity report, that's the theoretical that the model shows.
Correct, I agree.
Correct.
That's why that
Now,
doesn't make any
and
sense,
the
right?
next line in that capacity report says, due to the ammonia breakthrough, they've
Correct, which you don't see
increase it.
reflected in a violation.
Right. Recommend that we don't increase it. And it says that they also recommend we don't accept any more connections based on.
After the 80,000 gallons per day,
based
but
on-
we both
based
just
on
agreed that it's overperforming process-wise. So anyways, I'm not going to.
No, but let me
Yeah.
answer some, we'll come back to this. The guys are doing a great job staying within the contract permit discharge, the NIPD's permit, and
100%,
they're
no
doing a great
disagreement.
job. But we are losing solids.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go back to when we started cleaning the contact tanks, it was 15 years ago, more or less. But that was, they started doing that because of the phosphorus. We were trying to remove the phosphorus. Since then, we have put every tank online that was on. At that time, we're only running half the plant.
Okay.
So since then, we have put every tank online 24 hours a
Yeah.
day, 7 days a week,
Yeah. No,
365
trust
a
me, I
year.
understand that.
And the depth of the solids in the contact
Increasing.
tanks is gone from a foot to 2 foot to 8 feet. So
My understanding is that's only in the winter. Is that
the
year-round?
the winter is worse.
Oh, so more than 8 feet.
The winter is worse.
Okay.
So again, you have to look at the big picture and everything. And again, with the ammonia breakthrough, we're there.
So you're there now, not with 80,000 gallons per day more.
Well, that's with, again, you have to figure the what was previously permitted and allowed and agreed to. And then there are a number of connections in the community that are actively, that are paying and are not actually discharging. So we have to allow for them as well. And, you know, there's quite a significant number of them. There's over 400.
No,
So again,
yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Never disagree with the guys are
But
doing a
we're,
great job.
um,
The report, the 8-page report that came out that drew a line in the sand at 80,000 gallons per day. Honestly, it's not that. It's something else. And so
Well, it's
your 8 or 10 foot blankets and your breakthrough
It's the-
with no violations.
Well,
Well,
let's keep
it-
our fingers crossed.
Well, that's just it, because when I said the other day at the meeting, 2 meetings ago, you know, why did we choose this strategy? The answer was because we had to stop at 80,000 gallons per day, the magic number, or we would violate and go into the river. And it's actually what you just said. We could be doing it now, or we might overperform then and do better then too. Nobody can predict that, because it is a hypothetical model.
For the worst case, not plan for the best.
I think that would have been years ago, honestly, Dave, because you've been struggling so much. But I would just like to say, with this information, and we're still out with Frito-Lay, I was very happy to see you amend slightly the moratorium to allow just really tiny or no differences in flow. And I hope that if we get a little bit of capacity with Frito-Lay, that we will again loosen up the moratorium and, you know, create it. Because it, to me, listening to it, it was a different strategy than I've ever heard, to just do a self-imposed moratorium.
Again, we could have ignored everything.
No, that's actually not the strategy I proposed. I never proposed ignoring everything.
Go into violation,
No.
but it was a judgment. I'm not saying that's what you proposed.
Yeah, I never
but I'm saying we
proposed
could
that.
have done that. But we chose not to. We chose to be proactive. And again, I think it was the right decision.
I hope we do loosen up if we find some capacity, because 5 years is a long time, and we've already been at capacity, and we've been overperforming, and we haven't been violating. So I hope we can find that extra room as this
I hope
goes.
we continue to overperform.
I hope so. And honestly, as a town councilor versus as a wastewater facility operator, I think as we go forward, and hopefully we'll find a little capacity, a little bit of room, we, as town councilors, as opposed to me, facility operator at my other job, have to weigh. I'm going to explain the strategy. I said, I never said just ignore it and let it happen. What happens normally at a facility is you start to reach the area, which you said you've reached for several years. And each month on your DMR, you say, hey, we're getting into trouble, we're getting into trouble, we're getting into trouble, which you probably did. And then you put the state on notice. And what that does over a period of time is you don't get a fine. When you finally start to lose control and you violate maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, whatever, they're not going to fine you because you've been letting them know the whole time. And that's, in my experience with other facilities, what they chose. So that's why I was kind of confused when the report came out. And you chose something different, and that's okay.
But the state, the DEP is well aware that we've been approaching this limit. This did not shock them. And you have to remember, the upgrade we just completed, we made process modifications, which bought us some time. Again, the state's well aware of this, and they...
No, 100%, Dave. I've never heard of a self-imposed. You let them know, you let them know, you let them know. All right, so then you get the strategy. I'm trying to say now, as town councilors, we have to look at, okay, so they did give you a fine. Say they give you a $5,000 fine. If we as town councilors have a $5 million data center coming in, what are we going to say, you can't hook up? I know that's a minimal thing, but I'm just saying. So that's when I look at the strategy. It's not about the guys are performing greatly or anything like that. It's that dichotomy in my mind, like, it is a cross your fingers and hope, but it might be the same after 80,000 gallons. So I hope we find some room.
We're trying.
In the short term, it looks like our biggest contributor. In the short term, it looks like our biggest contributor is obviously giving us the most nutrient loading. If we could get any pre-treatment on that end, that'd be very helpful.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so,
for
you
the whole
guys.
town
Because
in
that
our-
could
in our
just
planning.
get you over the 5 years. And
Well, it would,
Yeah.
it'd offer a lot of different opportunities.
Thank you. Mr. Cottula.
I know you probably can't say much about the negotiations and stuff, but do you get a feeling that they're going positively or negatively, Frito? Or
It
how
hasn't
that-
been contentious to this point.
Okay. So they're not giving any pushback or? for what you
Not
did?
so far.
Not so far, okay. Thank you.
I've recognized at other facilities that they've done higher levels of pre-treatment than they're doing here at ours, at other facilities they have throughout the country.
Mr. Grandelsky, did you have something?
Yeah, well, we have not exceeded our permit, we have not had any violations with discharge to the river, so we've maintained the plant. Maybe we're not in the most efficient operation because of the tanks and what have you. But as Michelle was alerting to, do you have a violation? But then I don't know what the perception of that is. We've not violated, so we stayed within the limits. Maybe we are handcuffing ourselves. I don't know. I did get comments, 2 weeks ago with the truck that was hauling. They thought we were hiring trucks to bring it elsewhere to get capacity, and it was like, no.
Not yet.
It's a whole different scenario that,
that was my next question, Dave. Have we looked at that option of taking it liquid?
That would be expensive.
yes, that would be very expensive.
For sure. At the
It's
same
a-
time, depending on
it's-
how long this goes, that's
it-
very expensive as well.
It's an option, but that's a pricey alternative, yes.
I can probably tell you how much it is.
You probably have a very good idea, yes.
And then I keep getting comments that we should be interconnected with Putnam and Plainfield to buy us some, but even that, you couldn't get permitted for that.
It would be a permanent nightmare, and I
Right.
don't know as it would buy you anything.
I don't think it would buy any time, I just wanna, throw that out there, that's what,
Mhm.
we,
Agreed.
just to show that.
Yeah.
I
It's
think-
I appreciate everybody's concern and, anxiety over this. Believe me, I have a few sleepless nights myself. But I assure you, the situation is real.
And that's why it's good, I think, that's why, again, some of the comments are coming out that I get, well, they're always down in the meetings by themselves, as you know when the meetings are, you can attend, like, attending meetings, participation, the public does not show up. They know when something is going on, they could come forward, ask some questions, and they just, with you guys, I think there's only a few, well, the people that came in, they had issues with the connections because of the moratorium. That's the only reason they came forward. It was like, or even in the past, they wanted to get relief from paying the sewer use bill because the building burned down or something happened that way. No one shows up at your meetings, they don't pay attention. I don't know how to wave the flag and, because some of that too is not there. And then all of a sudden this happens and they're out there. So, but we need to be having a meeting like this to show that we are trying to do something. We're not just sitting back and business as usual.
It's unfortunate.
And
It
again, like
takes
these
time.
numbers that you're throwing out, it's nice to see different avenues, what we're trying to do, and there's costs associated with even trying to get funding, so.
Certain funding.
Yes, yes.
Certain funding.
So we are looking at all different types of funding, and
All that I am aware of, I've even contacted people that write grants for a living, right, and get a list, which is going to be in that memo that you'll receive, as far as the different funding options that are currently available. Some of them quite frankly, I don't think apply. But it's there. But, you know, if you want to do wetlands restoration, I guess we could apply, but I don't know if anybody has appetite for that. Again, I don't think some of it applies to our situation. The ones that do, we're actively seeking.
No, I think that's what's good, that we're throwing this out there.
Yep.
Because
No, it's a valid.
I don't know
valid
enough
question.
about it. I know enough just to get I don't want to get in any more trouble for myself, so we
Yeah,
need to
I'm
cover-
learning as well. So it's, there's a lot of variables here.
I have a question from the economic standpoint, from economic development standpoint. If we were to have a company that wanted to come into town that wanted to discharge a certain capacity above the 80,000, but there was going to be no to minimal nutrient load, is that something that could still come into town based on the moratorium, or?
I can't give you a blanket answer on that. It's something that we could look at.
Okay.
If there is anybody that is interested, I would have them contact us and show us what their numbers are.
Okay.
You know, I don't want to give anybody false hope, and I would not be overly optimistic, but possibility exists depending on what it actually is.
Okay. All right. I had that question based on the fact that you would reference the discharge amount that had been permitted to NTE and them not coming along, not making a difference in capacity because it was a minimal nutrient load.
Right.
And I just thought that there may be other types
If-
of businesses that may be looking to come into town that might be similar situation. And is that something you would consider allowing?
Again, we'd have to look at it.
Okay.
But it's,
All right. Thank you.
you're welcome.
So, did you have those apartments or those units that were supposed to go into the mill in your count for the discharge?
mill-
The mill that burnt down?
Yes.
You-
If that
you had
was,
those
that was the old
added in?
Blueville mill?
Yeah.
That burnt, yeah, that was factored in for years ago.
That was an approved,
It was an approved subdivision.
it was an approved subdivision years ago.
Yes.
Not the existing, that was that was previously approved, God, a couple,
25 years ago?
right, as a,
24 years, 23 years ago?
before the
So
condos
how
were
many-
built.
So how many units is that?
I don't remember.
So those are units that are counted into the flow.
Correct.
So those will actually extra units that could be used.
Not necessarily, because it's still an approved subdivision.
But the
It
mill-
doesn't matter.
the
The
mill
property
broke down.
exists. It is still an approved subdivision.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Grandelsky.
We could still, it's still the moratorium. This is a subject that is, we still have to delve into it. There still could be some options in it. There could be some policies that we could put forward to allow for some additional, well, because this is not something that has happened before here. This is totally new ground. So there's nuances there that we have to look at a lot of different scenarios.
Again,
I hope we're
yeah.
looking at that.
Yeah,
as a
again, I don't want to give anybody false hope.
No, but that's a
it's-
possibility that now you establish a moratorium, but then you gotta delve into it a little. Exactly what does that mean? Who does it affect? And have we exhausted all our options that, you know, we have to keep pursuing, that we can still maybe accept additional flow within the parameters, however the moratorium was defined.
Yeah,
I
it's-
don't know if that's the right.
We need to proceed cautiously and look at what the reality of it is for what anything new coming in is proposed.
And there's nothing, another thing I get, just to throw it out, we can't go out and rent tanks. That's what somebody
We
said.
could.
I mean, but you still have to modify the plant. and you still have to get a permit to
Yes.
do that. It's not something, you go down to the rental center and you rent
No,
a
it's-
2 million gallon tank or something and put it over there, and voila, we have additional
Yeah,
capacity,
it's,
so.
it presents other problems, yes.
Yes, yes.
And we just completed a modification in 2022, and we're still doing remnants of that modification.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's not, we've been modifying the plant
Hmm.
up to recently, basically.
Hmm.
So, it's not exactly what we're doing at the plant.
Thank you.
And,
Is there anything that the council can do? How can we, I guess, I mean,
let me think about that, unless
I
Mary
will
can
throw
think
that
of
out.
something
I
at the
think we
moment.
have to, if we can
Let
be of
let
any
me give
help.
that, let us give that some thought.
I mean-
Clearly, your continued support when we're applying for, funding would be, helpful. We may need some support letters or things of that nature. Maybe, I can't think of anything else at the moment. I don't know
We're
about.
gonna start relocating this. We're gonna need space for the tanks.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the ball field relocation will need to happen, that's for sure.
Well, that is interesting when I talk about, I got traction because they said the baseball field has to move. And why? They were just looking at that. That caught quite a few people's attention. But that's where the expansion of the plant has to go.
Mhm.
And, but we do have the Davis property, so that's almost immaterial that would.
Well, we have the
But it's there,
location.
we have to look at that,
Mhm.
but.
Yeah,
But that has to happen to create that space, so
Yes, yes.
correct. Yeah.
it has to happen first.
And what's the long-term plan? I mean, we've planned out this expansion, we just did an expansion, or modification, I should say, that finished in 2022. We do this very expensive one, and then what, we're gonna get to capacity again, and then what? Sit here with the same problem?
Well, that's where the plan comes in for the facility plan, for the plan and study to decide what we're looking at.
And we did that too in 2014.
Is that a 2-year timeline, Davey? We won't know the
I-
next capacity study till,
Now, that should be quicker than 2 years.
good. Because honestly, they may come back and say, there's a little bit of room here to buy you the 5 years or whatever.
They may.
It might, or,
I like the way you're thinking.
From Frito-Lay's,
but-
might give you 10. Frito-Lay could give you 10, and then they
Well-
give you 10, and okay, that bought us a year,
We'll see what we
10 what?
come up with.
percent
10% of what?
capacity, 10% capacity.
Oh, if they- if
I'm instead
they-
of saying you don't
If
know.
they removed, but you're saying if they removed.
If they removed a
nutrients.
little more and you got a little bit more out of the next capacity study.
I don't want to go too far down at the moment. Yeah.
But maybe looking at the economic development side, if we're looking to attract industry, but then we have to look at what their discharge is. In whatever happens with this scenario, I guess, we would have to be making a statement that we don't want the heavy loading, or are we gonna put ourselves in a situation that we, on that end, future development, someone's looking at the town, how, I don't know if that's or we're gonna look at the economic development.
We'll need to have conversations to decide what our long-term plans and goals are, clearly.
So that would have to be before we hire the new engineering people, or how does that play into
That
this?
factors into the plan and study. Again, as we get going, there'll be conversations we'll have as we proceed. Because clearly, we need to identify what we want to do. That's our first step. And then what we need to build to accommodate that.
Because if we attract certain industry, then we have to make sure that we can take care of them for the long term.
Agreed.
And I'm just throwing that out, that's, and then how do you, and then you have to come up with a strategy that if we're attracting industry where the biggest loading scenario comes in, how do you charge them appropriately? I don't know how that's a whole different,
Mm-hmm.
that's an animal you know, like some they just get so many gallons. I don't know if we test a lot, if we test every industry out there, but if some are heavy, you know, like obviously Frito Lay's the heaviest loading, that's a whole different animal, contract, whatnot, but if we're gonna maybe limit ourselves, that's, I think that's where the economic part,
Mhm.
we have to look at that.
It all factors in.
Thank you. Any further questions? Do you have anything further for us?
I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay.
The only thing I would add is, if anybody would like a tour of the facility, please contact us. Anybody watching at home, if you're curious,
Well, one
we'll be
thing is-
happy to give you a tour.
The smell was horrendous when I went down there a little after noon time, and last night I went by there around, I forget what time, and it was, and then by the time I had to go where I had to go, I couldn't stop and make a phone call. So, because it's usually, and at night, that wouldn't count, I mean,
Mhm.
but you wanna know when it's happening,
Yep.
and in case something, a pump is off,
And
or
that was
whatever else.
today or yesterday?
Today
at
around
noon
noon
time?
time, there was something going on.
I'll-
But again, by the time I got to a place, other phone calls took a priority, so
Did you ever try them totes, Dave? They come like 100-gallon tote, and they're like, it sounds stupid, they smell like perfume, but they're actually, you know, they have ions and they attach to whatever, and they take the hydrogen sulfide out of it, and you turn on a fan. We used to use them in Fall River all the time.
We used to have what I referred to as Dr. Smellgood. It was, seriously, it was like a vaporizer that we put in the yard.
Yeah, that's
And
similar.
it had-
It does more than just perfume.
Yeah,
It has
yeah.
a chemical thing.
But
Didn't work?
That machine hasn't worked in quite a few years now. Recently, we haven't done that. We'll have to, let me check into what's causing the odors and see what the problem was. And we'll see if we can correct it biologically. And then if we have to do something different, we will.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Thank you for coming
Thank you
forward.
all, appreciate it.
All right, we'll move on in the agenda. Next item up is 6B, meeting with Economic Development Commission and Staff Liaison Jill St. Clair.
Next down on the Price is Right.
And Ms. Wakefield did apologize. She had to leave for work. She did tell me she had some questions that she wanted to ask. She's actually going to reach out directly with those questions. Yes.
Good evening. I'm Jill St. Clair, and I have Jay Lorette, Todd Cook, and Dale Damaris, and I want to thank them for hanging in there with me tonight. I know they have young kids that have to get ready for school tomorrow morning, so thank you. And so we thought we would just put together a picture slideshow. It's more heavy on the graphics, so if you need a copy of it later, just to kind of give an overview of what we've been working on over the last year. So I'm going to turn it over to Todd.
Yeah, so some of the things that we've been working on over the past year since we last met with the council, and what we've been trying to really work towards is stabilization and growth of the commercial tax base, reactivating underutilized commercial properties within our town, reinvest in the wealth of the community, add value to the business community, elevate the exceptional educational opportunities that Kinley has to offer, and then promotion of Kinley's quality of place. So we want to kind of go over that and expand on what those each, what we want to talk about with those. So stabilization and growth of the commercial tax base is really, our goal is to make sure that we're keeping the businesses that are here. We want to stabilize them and grow that base so that we're keeping money flowing into the town from commercial business rather than making the burden on the residential people, right? All of us know that we don't want to increase taxes for the residents here. Well, it takes money to run a town. Well, the commercial businesses are where we're really making that up. So we want to continue to build that and keep that tax base stable and keeping it flowing in. So that's our goal and one of our missions. In reactivating some of those underutilized commercial properties, was really fun to listen to some of the people earlier today talk about how they really enjoyed walking downtown now and seeing all these businesses. Well, that didn't happen by accident. Those people we worked on that to help build that and get those businesses downtown. 140 Main Street was a underutilized building for quite some years, and Jill and I did a little math on that. It looks like we lost a little over $50,000 on that property as it sat vacant, right, for about 8 years. So that was tax revenue that we were losing, and now it's a fully functional building that's has a community within it that's all tax paying.
Income producing.
Right? Yep. So this was a lost leader before, and that's one of the things that we're proud of, that we helped to elevate the town again and start to bring it back to life. So that's just a piece that I had on that.
Yeah, so we can talk about that 140 Main Street. That was a public-private investment, and it was underutilized for well over 7 years. The town owned it. So some of you remember we had that special act for facade money. So with that money, we identified any environmental issues that may be going on with the building, stabilized the roof, and did the front windows and the doors. So that was the public investment on that to attract a developer. Since we've activated that space, I think there's one office left on the second floor. That was the catalyst that kind of spilled over into the rest of the Main Street, right? So success builds on success. So we have 14,000 square feet that have been reactivated. But also, they were able to utilize federal and state historic tax credits, so you could maintain that heritage that we were talking about. And without those tax credits and that support, it would look like a very different streetscape. And also, as a result of that, the goal is anything that's happening in that building, whatever's attracted, customers that are coming in, attracted to that building, the goal is for it to spill out into the larger community. So it's been a great driver. And if you can go to the next slide. You all got in your emails, I hope, that the second floor is doing a collaboration with the Killingley Business Association and the Northeast Chamber of Business After Hours. But during that Business After Hours, we'll be introducing 2 new businesses into the community and doing 2 more ribbon cuttings. So if you can make it, it'd be great. You just sign up through the chamber. Next slide. Jay?
Oh, great, my ugly
You're
mug.
up.
So, as Jill said, success builds success, and we heard it from our constituents earlier today that they love how the Main Street is looking. We understand that from a lot of our people in town, they feel that Danielson or the downtown will never become what it was. We strive to make it even better. Emerald Buddha, we took that. Everybody was heartbroken with Deb, but I think that the right person came in there and made it something. If you haven't eaten there before, she puts her heart in every dish she makes, and we absolutely love the atmosphere when we go there. Especially my family, we go there, and like I said, she just puts it all into that meal. A great family took over that, and then it just catapulted down. Almost every space is occupied on our Main Street.
Or at least under contract.
Yep.
So then, you talk about the multiplier. Here was another opportunity. We had an appliance store move out of that building, and Killingley Redemption Center came in. And that's a regional attraction. I was there today bringing my recyclables back at lunchtime, and there must have been 6 people deep at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, and once they're here, they're spending money. You can physically see them walk out of there and go across the street and get a coffee or go to Pourings and Passages. So that's been a great reactivation of a building that could have stayed dormant if we hadn't worked together with the zoning board to make that an allowable use in the downtown business district. Next slide. Some of you may or may not recognize this building. This is the Benny's over on Route 12. And we have tried several different scenarios in trying to get that space activated. That has been dormant for 10 years. You will be getting a ribbon cutting on this one too. So now it's storage on 12. I believe they put over $1 million into that, retrofitting it. So that's another investment in the community on a space that would have been dormant. Here's other places, the Dow Building across the street, fully occupied for the first time in I think 80 years. And then you'll see backfill, Gloria's Kitchen, right down by Valvoline. The old Dubliners, there was another business that quickly was able to move into there after COVID. And then, national franchises, Alta. I think the young people of this community, you're talking about where can they go? Too much time, my young people go there. Yeah, and that's a great addition to the community. Did you want to take adding value to the business?
I feel, to piggyback on what Jill was saying with the Redemption Center, the other factors of that is, everybody, thinks about the income that it produces, but a lot of the cleanup, cans and bottles. There's tons of people out there getting the cans and bottles, but they have a place that they can go, and it's timeless. They took 12 bags of mine, and it was 15 minutes. They are rapid in there. There's a guy that I was talking to the other day when I brought mine, and this guy had a van full, and he used to go by bike and collect all bottles and cans, and now he bought a van, and now he does it, and that's what he does. And he had these 12 bags. He let people go, which gave us a time to talk and see what he does and how he operates. But Boy Scouts, it gives them a chance to bring down and not have to sit at Big Y. It gives them more time. It is such a huge addition and an asset to our community.
So the other thing we always work on this, but particularly this year, is just adding value to the business community, connecting them with opportunities. So making sure that our manufacturers know about the CT Apex Accelerator Program. The federal and state government are the largest customers of goods and services, but how do our manufacturers know how to enter that playing field, right? So there's connecting them with that kind of information. We also offer an online free directory for all our businesses, so that if you're new to Killingly, or you are looking for someone, push to the button, one place. There's no phone book anymore, but we have an online directory, and it's free to our business community. And anytime I pull a trade name, I do it on a monthly basis, the first thing they get is a letter. Do you want to be in our directory? Access to capital. Interest rates are high right now. Making sure our business community knows about the Connecticut Boost program, which is a 4.5% interest rate for a business that's been existing in Connecticut for 2 years, makes over $25,000 a year. They can tap into that. Local banks can't compete with that. This is part of the Bank Revitalization Act. They have to give 10% of their profits back into the community. So there's a catch-all bucket for that. The Women's Business Development Grant Program. That's a grant program that is for women, 51% owned women. They have to be in business for 2 years, make over $25,000, but they can get that grant money. And often I'll get the question, well, why are only women business getting that? Well, it wasn't until 1988 did women have access to business capital, and thanks to President Reagan, he rolled out this program for women. Northeast Economic Alliance, that's another funding opportunity. If a bank says no to a startup, we have an option. We can send them to Northeast Economic Alliance, but they have to have that denial letter. Another opportunity is the Sector Rise grants. Our young baker on Main Street, Little River Bakery, we were able to get him a grant to buy another oven. That was huge for a small startup. And I'm going to pass it over to Jay. He can probably talk about the Business Academy that we've been running.
So the Small Business Academy, we're very proud to say that we've had close to or over 20 ribbon cuttings from those participants in the Small Business Academy. My son being in the technical field, he's a contractor in the area, done work all over the area, was one of those attendees, didn't really need a ribbon cutting, but we've done several ribbon cuttings from those participants. We've even opened it up to 16-year-olds, which we've had a bunch of young entrepreneurs with tremendous ideas that are going to help, even push this community further.
So you'll see that location right there. That was a chicken barn 2 years ago. And she went through the Small Business Academy. Her goal was to do 12 events that first year. I don't think you can get a booking this year,
No.
maybe not next year. They're knocking it out of the park, but as a business model, now they have all these ancillary businesses that she's feeding. You have the photographers, the caterers, you have the bar cart, the DJs. So it's been a great added value to an underutilized space. If you go to the next slide, some of our younger entrepreneurs, Ra-Ra's Ice Cream, and now they're hiring. At first, they were trying to run it through their families, and now this ad, they're ready to roll for the spring. Next slide. And even Dr. Sarah, Apex Chiropractic, she knew everything about chiropractic practice, but nothing about the business model, went through the program as well. And those are just 3 examples of many candidates have gone through. The next thing we work on in collaboration with the Killingly Business Association and the schools is making sure that we are promoting that Killingly has a skilled workforce. And here are some of the programs. I think Jay and Todd probably want to talk about those.
Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, so we're fortunate to have some really good schooling in our Killingly here, right? We have Ellis Tech, which has taken off to be one of the best technical schools. It's almost impossible to get in there. You have to have really good grades. You can be very selective, unfortunately. That's one of the downsides, but it is a great program, and we need more skilled labor force right now. So it's great to have them. The Advanced Manufacturing Center, that's helping people, our industries locally, build their workforce, right? Because they have the skills that they're learning right here in our own schools. KHS has the 29 career pathways, which is amazing. They really have all these different solutions for the kids that may not know which career path they want to take. So they're guiding them and helping them find that. Internship opportunities with EastCon and Killingly High Schools, our community college, QVCC, and Killingly's World Champion Robotics Club. They are known internationally now. Jill and I were talking about Japan knows where Killingly is, right? Because of our robotics team, which is pretty phenomenal. Major stakeholders are supporting scholarship programs. Who was it that you were talking about? Spiral?
Spiral has given hundreds of thousands of dollars in scholarships to this community.
And then the Tips for Tools program I passed on because I didn't know.
Tips for Tools is an event that the Killingly Business Association put together to give children or young adults that couldn't have the tools that they would need in the trade. The Killingly Business Association raises the money for that, and they provide the students with that. Another thing I wanted to piggyback on, Todd, with Ellis Tech, they're already in the community working. So they're already doing electrical. I was with the electrical team for Ellis Tech at Hope Medical in Plainfield. They were putting the sprinkler systems in, or the fire alarms. talked to a couple of students, and they just loved the program. The teacher gave them the assignment. They went off into teams. It was great to see them, how engaged they were and how just motivated, and with the community, they actually were already set to go.
I'll also add that we have asked in the past to have the Board of Education join us at the economic development, our meetings, and they have finally started to come and engage, and they've collaborated with us, and superintendent joined us, which was really nice to get them involved, because we think that's really an important part of what we're doing as well. So it was really nice to start seeing that, kind of, not just kind of having these two opposing forces, but kind of all being together,
Collaboration over competition.
Next slide. So this one here, you talk about making an investment in a community. The owner of Orion Utility Contracting was a tech school graduate. On the far right-hand side, you'll see a group of 20 tech students that are working. He's giving them their hours in their apprenticeship. It's the only Connecticut-based utility contracting business. So we get all the personal property tax for the trucks. He could go anywhere, and some of the cost headwinds in Connecticut are a little high, but he's so invested in this community, the community that educated him, that quality of place. So we're really excited to have him here and support him through the APEX program, introducing him to how to do the government contracting. So we wanted to spotlight that. And I think you'll notice there's probably 12 women electricians. I don't think I would have seen that when I was coming up in school. So that's really exciting to see. Next. So going forward, retention and stabilization of the commercial tax base. We heard about our hardships with the wastewater treatment plant. That's our number one priority because our businesses that are already here, we want to make sure that we can retain them and that they have the ability to grow where they made their investments. Also leveraging state and federal resources that, being competitive for those grants. The brownfield remediation, I think we talked about that the last time we were here, on how we can clean up those properties. They're underutilized. They were our epicenters of wealth back in the day. So just reinvesting in those properties. It takes time doing the environmental assessments so that, when we're ready, a developer knows what they're buying. There's no mystery. So it's that public and private investment that works so well on Main Street. We need to take it to those mill epicenters. Next slide. So, Mr. Joe, I think he stole he must have looked over my shoulder yesterday or something, because I'm like, he stole my punchline, because I was said, the last slide, I wanted to, kind of show that this is Logi's greenhouse. Logi's been in business. They planted seeds 133 years ago, and now they're a national brand. They ship all over the world. And they're partnering with a startup. And I thought, isn't that amazing? That's exactly what our community is. Rich in businesses that were a startup at one point and have grown, and they've been able to maintain a life here. Employ our residents, and they bring in an amazing amount of people. On their plant sale days, 7,000 people will come on a single day. I was there when it was 10 degrees last weekend, brought a friend from out of town, and we spent 3 hours there, and there must have been about 150 people. It's always tropical, even in the dead of winter. So that gentleman was saying, what do you do with your kids? You bring them to Logi's. So I'm gonna stop talking and hand it over to Dale.
I don't have a paper.
I'll show you mine.
No, I'm good. I'm going to talk about the industry. We've only got one lot left in our industrial park. It's sold. It's actually sold to my son. He owns it. Not sure. We were going to put up storage units to move our business in there, but then the sickness came along, and that put the kibosh to that, and everything went out of price, and now it's not affordable to do it. but he does have somebody looking at it. But we have another company in our business, in our park, that's looking to expand. We had one company that's working on, I believe, a $1.3 million addition improvement, basically inside the building with new machinery and refiguring things. We have another company that's doing some more work with their machinery inside the building right now. We have another company I know of they're talking about future expansion. Now, how I know this is because I work for a lot of them. I have a small construction business. And most of the people in our industrial park I work for. The reason I got on economic development back in 1997 was I worked for Ernest Jolly down on Route 12, and he worked for everybody in the area, all the residential, all the industry. And I asked him one day, I said, why do we spend so much time working for industry? And he said, because residential it's too hard to work there. So when I built my business up, that's what I did. I went into working by plowing snow, got my foot in the door that way. So 2 reasons I got on economic development was when I had talked to these customers, I always ask them how things are going, blah, 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 blah. They said, and I talked about the town of Killeen, they said, yeah. Most of them said to me, basically said, Killeen's got us here, now they don't want to bother with us, they got our tax dollars, that's all they want. That was one reason. The other reason was I heard a lot of people say, we raise our kids here, got good schooling, we send them away to college, they don't come back because there's no good jobs. Those were the 2 reasons I got on economic development, and I've been there since 1997. So we have to, our goal has always been, with Elsie, who I worked with, pre-Jill, was always to go see the people and try to help them, say that Killeen is here by what Gil was saying about the loans and stuff, and also what can we do to help you to stay here. And we still do that. That's my goal as economic development, is to make sure when I'm talking to these house businesses, to what can we do to help you, whether it's education, try to get them involved with the education program, try to get them involved with the school to career. A lot of them step up to do that. We just had another business sold in town to a bigger corporation, so who knows what they're gonna do. Right, sir, huh? So we have to keep our industry where we are because they pay big tax dollars. Now, I don't know how it works now because I'm not chairman anymore, but back years ago, Elsie would always tell me how much industry was paying and commercial was paying compared to residential. And I guess our goal was 10 to 15% of our taxes came from commercial and industrial. We considered ourselves good. We had as much as 40% sometimes. Reval, of course, put into that, but that's pretty good.
We're at 26% right now. Ideally, we'd like to be a little over 30. You want to pass that around?
Now, how much did the increase in residential properties at this past reval affect that percentage? Because I know prior, I know this past reval, there was a substantial shift on the amount of the amount of the budget came from residential as opposed to industrial, commercial.
I think the way that the state breaks it down, this is coming from the state.
Oh, okay.
So if you go to Advanced CT, you can do town profiles, and you can do them for every year. And it's pretty consistent. I think it's the percentage, the ratio of we have 26% of our businesses contributing to the grand list, and the rest is residential. It's not the number, it's the percentage ratio.
Okay, all right.
It's not the
dollar amount,
Yeah,
it's
if that's
percentage,
if I'm
okay.
understanding your question correctly. Also on that sheet, I know last year, Mr. Whitehead asked about what was our hourly rate wage, and I went on to Department of Labor, and they break it down by regions, so I couldn't get it for Killingly, but in your package, you'll see there's another great resource for data, is the Connecticut Economist put out by DECD, and they'll tell you by trade. So I could tell you what New London and Groton is doing. They do the New London Norwich area, but it doesn't translate for up here. So you'll see an average salary in manufacturing, distribution, retail, that kind of thing, but they just really haven't drilled down to that data, so I wasn't able to provide that for you. I'm gonna ask them why they're not representing this region. Also, you'll see historically that we had a very high unemployment rate. We are down competitive at the state rate, if not below. Currently, we're at 3%, but that's seasonal. You have a lot of seasonal businesses, so people are laid off. But we've been as low as 2.6%, and that's an historic low. So, we need those employers, we need those jobs, but we also need the workforce, and we want to keep them here. We want those, the kids that grew up here can stay here, raise their families. I mean, that comment from one of the visionary committees, that resonated with me.
We also, I was very fortunate to meet a guy out of Boston, John Sawada from Rex Development. He told me 5 years before Morgan Body went into American Standard that they were coming here. He also told me that there was a study done at that time. There was 3 companies looking to move into our area, meaning from 395, from 95 to, Norwich to the Mass Line. They had studies done about quality of work, quality of education, people. They all came back with the same thing. There wasn't enough workforce in this area. There wasn't enough qualified workforce in this area. Well, one of them is here. The other one's knocking on the door. The other one, I don't know who the other one was, but I think it had something to do with a pharmaceutical. But one of them is in Plainfield, one of them is knocking on the door to move into the area. But it took, I don't know how long Morgan Body's been there. They've been there at least 5 years, so that was 10 years ago he told me this.
Yep.
The 140 Main Street building, we've worked on that building for at least 15 years, so it takes time for these things to develop. It just doesn't happen overnight, especially with projects like that. So there is another guy in the area, there's another piece of land in the area close to our industrial park that I'm trying to convince him to do a partnership with us, or at least come in and talk to Mary and to Jill about doing a partnership. The same guy, John Sawada, told me that industry today, I do not believe that Rite Aid or Walgreens or Child World, when it was built, and United Natural Foods would be where they are today, because they want to be on 395 or 95. They want to be right there. They don't want to come off a mile. They don't want to come off a half a mile. Even commercial. Dunkin' Donuts, when it was at the little gas station at the corner of 12 and 101, wanted to move up to O'Reilly's. Dunkin' Donuts wouldn't let them move up there. They said it was too far off of 395. They want to be on 395. We're very fortunate to have four exits on 395. Land out where you live up on Lake Road, right? Yeah, that was plan of development in the future, but business doesn't want to move away. They want to be right on 395. But our goal is to help our industry stay here, because we have some good companies here with some damn good paying jobs.
But I have a question. If we're talking about expansion, and then we have the sewer moratorium.
Well, they've been talking about expansion for a while.
That's really, that puts in a kibosh.
Yep.
They can't expand right now, but you're looking, even someone to look, it took how many years from Morgan to get down in the Plainfield? Does somebody even start looking at us, because we don't have any sewer, and they're on the sewer.
Yep.
Most of that is gonna be on a particular sewer line. So, again, that's what I'm saying, the exposure to get out there, that we need help to get that sewer plant moving along, and so that you guys can get your stuff going. But if I keep getting the exposure that, it'll take care of itself, or why is the price so high, but we gotta sell it, we gotta put money, invest money into that, so that we can get all these projects going. But it'd be hard to keep and I don't know how the moratorium would affect an existing entity, because then it's the increased flow. So you might be here, but if we can't, I don't know where that goes in the negotiations with, when they're trying to determine the policies of exactly how does that moratorium affect existing entities. That's a kind of a moving target that trying to get that described, because if they can't expand, then they might go totally somewhere else. That, I don't wanna lose, you know, existing assets.
Well, industry today, like anybody else, they always try to figure out ways of saving money on waste. So, because it costs money when you make waste, it costs money to get rid of it. Look at a lot of businesses, I don't care what town you're in, you can drive the end of their driveway, there's a bunch of pallets there because they don't want to pay to get rid of them.
Right.
People stop and pick them up, you know? So they're doing the same thing, they're always trying to figure out ways of saving money disposing things, recycling or whatever. So I'm sure they're all doing that.
But like I said, the moratorium
I agree
is
with you.
really putting a squash on a lot of things. How do you know, light a fire somewhere else? Oh, there's another grant program that we're not looking at. Somebody, oh yeah, we found something. Whatever help that WPCA can get, so we can keep these people here. Because even our brownfields, we couldn't do nothing. Now, Prims, I don't see how that's gonna move forward if we have a moratorium. I don't think the feds are even gonna look at that because the sewer can't handle.
Yeah, it's a challenge. You know, identifying what the hazards are, cleaning it up, and then having a shovel-ready project on the other side of it. It's really, you know, you get points for the development plan. Right now, we can't offer a development plan because they can't hook up.
Right, that's where, I don't know.
But luckily, we got funding for some of those ahead of time, before the moratorium.
And it's, that's what I'm saying, it's kind of putting the brakes in your arena. Whatever's already been going, that's good. And his interpretations, you know, can I still connect? Can I not connect? That building's been abandoned for how many years? That, you know, maybe a small entity or whatever, but if they're not allowed to connect, the development scenario goes away.
And that's why we're working on the underutilized parcels, where we can get them in. I've never been busier. Breaks my heart when I have to tell them I don't have a timeline. They want to be here.
We had meetings, I was in a meeting with the owner of Prims with, I believe, Congressman Courtney, and there were two bigwigs from the EPA from Boston. They reminded me of the movie with Burt Reynolds in it, Smokey and the Bandit. The second time where they had the big guy and the little guy. That's exactly what they were, with bow ties, with wool suits in July. And they're gonna do everything for us. We promise we're gonna get this, we're gonna get that, they did nothing. Nobody can push Prims.
Well, you were saying about the development over on Blueville, that there was a subdivision that was approved many years ago. But then there was a plan, then the mill burned down. But if the mill was, is that off the cuff on the moratorium with the sewer?
No, so that was still an approved subdivision, so that, because it had an approved subdivision plan, we have to incorporate that, because that had already received its approval.
So we could proceed with pushing that mill project to get that?
Right.
Okay, all right.
To shovel right, I mean, I think we've made some progress on that one.
But
as
that's
far
not
as-
shut off because of, that's what I'm looking at.
Well, that has been a long-standing subdivision.
Right, okay, the mill.
And that's
also.
things that we have to, that's what Dave was talking about with, you know, previously approved. I mean, there was a subdivision on Green Hollow that was approved a couple of decades ago, that is just starting to kind of revive a little bit as far as, you know, if there's going to be potential additional development there, right? So subdivisions that were approved and approved with connections, sometimes they go through various phases, right, where they only do a portion of it, but it doesn't negate the full
But we gotta be
authority.
able to promote that type of thing, that's still on the table.
Sure.
That's not, see, that's another problem with the moratorium, and I can't, it's beyond my capacity. What can still go forward, what cannot go forward?
And that's where I would recommend, some of this, we do have to take on a case-by-case basis. So as people have these questions, they should really be reaching out to Dave's office to kind of talk through, what parcels they're looking at, what may have been previously approved, what availability might be, because it does, there's a number of factors that have to be considered.
Would there be any benefit to an economic strategy of, that was a fairly large project, right? Wasn't it 100 units or something? The
which-
mill? What was
Oh,
it?
so the mill itself was only 51 units. There was a condo development plan, but just the mill was 51 units.
So it just makes me wonder, Mary, where these things are on hold and there's no possibility, if there would be some benefit to having like an incentive to say to the owner or the developer, hey, you want to put this off for 5 years and we'll give you this much, and then it goes to Dave's capacity. Like as a strategy.
That's something that we can evaluate with legal.
I
There's.
think that's a good point.
There's a
They can
property
trade,
right.
yes, I would
There's a
like
property
that.
right there, and they have an approval. So, to say that there's, some of the properties you can look at and say, oh, there's no possibility, but there could very well be possibility, we just don't see it. We don't know what's happening on the back end of something, and all of a sudden we see movement and change with that, and that would negate somebody's property right. So, that could be a conversation that we have with the attorneys.
Yeah, with their sign off, of course, an incentive to hold off.
Well, I know some of these parcels, like I was at a Northeast Commercial and CID
NECID.
this morning up in Putnam, and there's an existing permitted, it's already been laid out, Briarwood, and there's a realtor actively marketing that parcel. And I think that is 55 units, housing units, that was pre-approved. And that was back, 8 years ago. So, they're still actively trying to market that and get the information out there.
But that's the key, the information, and that's where it's lost in the shuffle. All of a sudden moratorium, but there's still parcels that are allowed to build on and tie into the sewer, and the owners don't know that that's allowed.
Yeah. Well, that's part of our job, is to educate.
No, that's what I'm saying.
so- yeah.
As we're starting to look at this, we've got to be
Yeah.
creative, and so there's
So-
still developable
Parcels.
areas that can still tie in, even though we have a moratorium.
Mhm. So, for example, Bank of America is for sale. They're actively marketing that, but in their marketing materials, they put options. Like, it can be a restaurant, it could be a drive-through. And I had to call them up and say, you do know about our moratorium. So it has to be a like-use flow. They have a connection, so it would have to be like a doctor's office, another financial institution, but banks are shrinking their footprints, they're not adding. So that's going to be a challenge. But we had to let them know. I sent them a copy of the moratorium.
That building wasn't auctioned?
The auction is at the end of the month.
Oh, I thought it ended.
No, they extended it.
No, they did. Okay.
Yeah, for a month, yeah.
In similar situation, I was in a commercial investment division meeting in Groton, and there was a agent that has a property in Killingley, and I informed him, I said, well, we gotta make sure that there was an approval of the, because we have a moratorium. He's like, you have a what? And
Yes.
had to lay it out there and
Yes,
give him the
yes.
education and be like, listen, you may wanna contact, the sewer authority, make sure that that's still valid, make sure that you're still approved, so. definitely putting out the education out there.
That's what I'm saying, we got the Bank of America building that they want bigger, but they can't, and then we have some other arenas. But I think I like your idea, Michelle.
No, well,
that-
I'm thinking of, so you've got some that are marketing and they're, they want to make money. And you do have people that are just holding on and they're paying the taxes. You might say, hey, you don't have to pay taxes. You want to sign on this and wait 3 years to sell, or, I don't know what those properties are like. but-
So it's a fine balance. In order to get those brownfields and that pile of rubble cleaned up, we have to have the ability to attract a developer, right? So if you
No, I'm not
extinguish
picking that
all of
one
that
specifically. I'm
infrastructure,
saying there's a difference between somebody who's actively marketing. There are people probably have something that's just sitting there and they've, it's approved and they never did it. And hey, maybe an incentive would be don't pay taxes. Well, you don't have to pay taxes on that and, sign off and you're going to wait 3 years to market it. I don't know what's out there. You guys know what's out there. I really don't.
Now, would it be worthwhile reaching out to any property owners who have, like, old subdivisions that were approved, to reach out to them just to make them aware, we know there's a moratorium, just so you know, you're already approved, this doesn't affect you? Would that be worthwhile, reaching out to them?
there's only 2 in that category.
All right.
And they both are marketing.
Okay.
One, he wanted to get, it was with the power lines, there was a requirement to put it under the ground.
Yeah.
It went through planning and zoning, and so that one's still on the market. He's still actively looking to build. And then the other one, like I said, I think it's Lyman has
Yep.
the listing, and he's actively marketing that as
Okay.
well.
Yeah.
Is that
I
an
would-
over 55?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if there was others or not.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wish there was. We're
I
always
wonder
looking
if
for
we could have an
solutions.
incentive program to buy capacity, like, all right, you've got this and you've got a mother-in-law and you no longer have a mother-in-law and you're gonna disconnect. Here's your incentive.
What about the East Killing Mill? That was 50 units, I think, in the building and 250 condos.
And which one?
Bailey Hill.
Bailey,
Oh.
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't have sewer out there, does it?
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does, yep.
I don't think the infrastructure was, yeah.
I think
Didn't have
about-
water.
yeah, you're
It didn't
right.
have
That's-
water, but it was either 150 or 250 condos,
'cause
plus
yeah, that
50
had-
units
Where
in the mill.
was it tied in?
The sewer, actually,
The
it's
sewer's
tied-
there.
It's there, it's tied, the mill's tied into the sewer.
Okay,
I don't think
because
that's
that's
on
why
our
we
list.
ran the sewer to tie into the mill.
That's right.
Otherwise, if the mill wasn't there, we
And
wouldn't.
then they
have ran
bought all that property on the backside of Slater Hill that faces the Whetstone condos
yep.
to put 200, I think it was 250 condos in
Well, they
there.
built that one house.
Yeah, and it's falling apart.
Well, yeah, because it's on, so there's, okay, so there's an old mill that, okay.
Plus the guy that's gonna do the housing project on Blueville Road, that, not doing it now.
D'Amato?
Yep,
It's still on the market, though.
yeah.
But the Bailey Hill, I don't believe that's on our moratorium, so there wouldn't be a trade-off on that one. That's not listed. Yeah.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying, the Bailey Hill should be active, because it's tied in, it's.
Yep.
So then, I don't wanna take that off you, if we're missing something somewhere, we gotta get it on the list that's on the second page of that moratorium page, that says you are still allowed. And that I didn't pick up on that, but that's.
All right, at this point, it is 10:58, and if we're gonna extend the meeting, I would need a motion to extend it, or do you have anything further? Any further questions from council?
The only quick question I have is, where do we find all those programs and stuff, Jill?
They'll be listed on our economic development page. I put that up there, but also if it pertains to like women-owned businesses, I'll send it out. I also send it to the KBA and the Northeast Chamber, so as many people as possible. But you'll see it on the left side of the website on the economic development.
All right. I want to thank you for coming forward this evening and waiting as long as you did before you got a chance to speak. And thank you for everything you do. All right, moving on in the agenda, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I believe Ms. Barclay got the original motion and second for Mr. Grandelski. All those in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? Abstentions? This meeting is adjourned.
So we have 1 minute to spare, which is okay. Because I was ready to give us 5 minutes, but I didn't want to do that.